Thanks for joining us to discuss AIG choice programs in Orange County schools, as well as hear from the public about our proposed budget for next academic year. And with that, I will pass it to Dr. Felder.
Thank you very much, Chair McKenzie. All right. Okay, so thank you and good afternoon, Chair McKenzie, Vice Chair Stevens, all of our board members, families, students, and staff. This afternoon, staff will provide information on 3 topics. The first is the district's Academically and Intellectually Gifted, also known as AIG program, proposed choice programs, and the latest iteration of the budget for the 2021-2022 school year. Before I turn the presentation over to staff, I want to offer just a few comments about the 3 topics that will be presented tonight. So on Monday, March 22nd, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction's Division of Advanced Learning and Gifted Education informed Orange County Schools that our AIG program has been recognized and is highlighted as a promising practice for North Carolina's Call to Action for Equity and Excellence Strategic Initiative. We are so proud of this recognition, and while also recognizing that we must continue to refine and perfect our AIG program into a more equitable and excellent program in service to all children. We will not be satisfied until this goal is achieved and look forward to the board's support with doing so. So today, you will receive an update about where we've been, where we are, and where we are going with AIG in the district. Mrs. Sarah Mail, AIG facilitator, and Dr. Chris Gammon, Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, will facilitate the AIG presentation. Next, Orange County Schools prides itself on being the first choice for families. To be the first choice for families, all Orange County schools must be of the highest quality by providing each and every student with an excellent education. I am hearing an echo. Is everyone muted? Oh, thank you. All right, there we go. And so all Orange County schools must be of the highest quality by providing each and every student with an excellent education, regardless of its size or location. Reimagining choice programs in our district is simply to allow parents the option of pursuing the most appropriate learning environment for their children. Based on research, today staff will present reimagined choice programs for the district and are seeking permission to further explore the options that will be presented today in order to bring additional information back to the board. So today, Dr. Kathleen Dawson, Deputy Superintendent, will share proposed choice program options. And last but not least, good old John Adams, the second president of the United States, once said, "The whole people must take upon themselves the education of the whole people and be willing to bear the expense of it." So tonight, before the public hearing, staff are going to share a revised version of the 2021-2022 school year budget that was presented at the last board meeting. So between the last board meeting and now, we have gotten additional information about ESSER II and ESSER III dollars, including what we can expect and how those funds could be spent. So when we met last, we didn't have that information, but we have it now. And therefore we've revised the budget to reflect the infusion of those dollars. So while no action is needed on what will be presented tonight, please keep in mind that the board will be asked to take action on the proposed budget at the Monday, April 12th board meeting in preparation for presenting the proposed budget to the county commissioners in May. And so Mrs. Rhonda Rath, our Chief Finance Officer, will facilitate the budget discussion. So if there are no questions, I will turn things over to Ms. Mail and Dr. Gammon.
Thank you so much for Dr. Felder for the introduction. I do want to thank everybody for your time this afternoon. And I want to send a special thank you to Ms. Sarah Mail, who is our student talent development facilitator. We also have 3 of our AIG facilitators from respective schools that have joined us this afternoon as Dr. Felder noted, to share just an overview about the current status of the AIG program, also some state level regulations that we follow, and then next steps with the AIG program as far as opportunities for growth. Mrs. Mail has done a tremendous job working over the last several weeks to piece this presentation together, really to lay out kind of a historical context, but really to focus primarily on where we are now and where we want to go in the future. And she's done that all while also teaching classes in Orange County schools. She's serving as a district level leader who invests in our AIG specialists as well as our teachers, but she's also jumped in this year due to staff shortages to work face-to-face and remotely with students. We just can't thank Mrs. Mell enough for all of her work, her time, and her commitment, just going above and beyond the call of duty. So at this time, I'm going to throw it over to Mrs. Mell, and she's going to start the presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you all can hear me. It's good to be with you today. Thank you for inviting us to share this information, and I appreciate the warm welcome from Dr. Felder and Dr. Gammon. The 3 AIG specialists joining me today are Ms. Pam Francis, Ms. Cindy Sinacrope, and Ms. Beth Weiner. We wanted to have more AIG specialists for you to talk to today, but they just had other commitments and could not be here. I am not able to advance the slides, so next slide, please. Today, we will share an overview of the state legislation and standards that guide our program, the processes used for screening and identification, the services provided by AIG specialists, our current LEA data, and also provide the next steps for our local program. Next slide, please. Article 9B is the state legislation that mandates gifted education services in the state of North Carolina. It directs us to differentiate educational services for students who perform or who show the potential to perform at substantially high levels of accomplishment when compared with others of their age, experience, or environment. From this legislation, DPI developed and continues to revise the North Carolina AIG program standards. These program standards were developed to serve as a framework and to guide our local AIG plan. They reflect the best practices in gifted education, and they ensure the needs that AIG students are met and that the potential of AIG students is optimally developed. As you can see on the screen, there are 6 overarching standards concerning and focusing on identification, programming, differentiated curriculum, personnel, professional development, partnerships, and program accountability. Next slide, please. Every public local education agency is required to write an AIG plan, and it's mandated by Article 9B in the state board policy. Local plans are then approved by the LEA's Board of Education and then sent for review by DPI. Plans are written every 3 years. Our current AIG plan is in effect from school year 2019 to the close of 2022, and it was reviewed by a panel of 3 gifted experts at DPI. The next plan cycle will be 2022 to 25, and we will start writing that next year and look forward to getting a lot of stakeholder input as we revise the plan. We also wanted to share our allotment process for how AIG specialists are allotted to schools. According to our local AIG plan, the specialists are allotted based on the number of identified AIG students and the total school enrollment. This is because AIG specialists not only serve those students who are identified, we look for all of the students in the school who have potential, and we nurture those talents and those gifts. So that is why the allotments are based on both identified students and the total school enrollment. Once those numbers, we know those numbers, the data is pulled by me, the AIG facilitator, and then calculations are used to determine the ratios of AIG specialists to students, not just to identified students, but also to those of the whole school. So for student identification for services, there's a 3-step process. The first step is screening, where we review assessment data and compile a list of students who may need gifted services. And then we have the step of referral. Anyone can refer a student for AIG evaluation. Parents, teachers, the students themselves can refer. We then collect additional data for all referred students who have demonstrated potential need, and we create student profiles. And then step 3, once we collect all of that data, we share it with the school's needs determination team, which typically consist of an administrator, a counselor, the AIG specialist, teachers, and other individuals who know the student, and they review the profile and then make an identification decision. So let's take a closer look at that screening process. Screening can take place at all grade levels. In Orange County, we use a universal screening process, which means that activities and assessments that all students participate in are used for screening purposes. At the K2 level, we're looking for students who are performing at least 1 year or more above grade level in both reading and math. And then we can individually screen those students using one-on-one assessments. In grade 2, we administer a screener to all second grade students in the district each spring. Local and subgroup norms will be used, and currently our AIG plan states that the COGAT is the screener. I wanted to note that this year, due to school closure last year, we are also administering the COGAT to all third graders to make sure that we have data on all cohorts of students. And then in grades 3 through 12, we look through standardized achievement assessments such as end of grade test. These are not the only things that we look for. We look at all student data and we use that to screen students for referral. Students who are at a 95th percentile or above move on. And when available, we also use local or subgroup norms. So just a quick overview, there are several identifications you will hear, definitions. To be academically gifted, students perform or show a potential to perform at substantially high levels of accomplishment in the academic areas of reading and or math. To be intellectually gifted, students perform or show the potential to perform, at substantially high levels of accomplishment in reasoning and critical thinking areas outside of reading and math. And if a student is identified as AIG, they are both academically and intellectually gifted. So in Orange County, we are fortunate that we have several identification pathways. The purpose for using multiple pathways is to ensure that no single criterion prevents a student from identification, and it ensures that we are using both quantitative and qualitative data in the identification process. We do not seek to be gatekeepers in Orange County. We want to be inclusive when we are identifying students and looking at their performance. Students may qualify as academically gifted in reading only, in math only, or in reading and math. They may qualify as intellectually gifted, or they may qualify as both, as I stated previously. So to dig deeper into the pathways, pathway 1, students would score a 95th percentile or higher on a verbal quantitative or quantitative nonverbal composite on an aptitude assessment. This could be a COGAT, but there are other tests available. We also use subgroup and local norms when we're looking at pathways 1 and 2. Pathway 2 is 95th percentile or higher on 2 standardized achievement assessments. So the difference between pathway 1 and pathway 2, pathway 1 is 1 score on an aptitude test, and pathway 2 is 2 scores on achievement test. Those are both for reading or math qualifications, academically gifted. Pathway 3 is the portfolio, and this is where we have a lot of flexibility. There's a beauty in this pathway because we are collecting data, both quantitative and qualitative, on the whole student. And this is also to identify in reading or math. So we do have that portfolio pathway. And then pathway 4 is for what we call highly gifted students, and that's a 98th percentile or above on both an aptitude and an achievement assessment. And finally, to be identified as intellectually gifted, students must score at the 95th percentile or higher on a nonverbal portion. That could be the COGAT nonverbal. We also have the Naglieri that's available. All right, that's a quick overview of identification. Let's jump into programming. In Orange County, programming is organized by grade span, and each grade span has a specific purpose. As you can see on the slide, K2, we focus on experience and exposure, 3-5 talent development, 6-8 independence and agency, and 9-12 planning for the future. So in grades kindergarten through 2nd grade, the purpose is to expose all students to activities and tasks that require various kinds of higher order thinking, such as divergent and inventive thinking. A note about K2 services: we use a research-based curriculum to develop thinking skills. This can take place in both whole group and small group settings. In grades 3 through 5, the purpose of programming is to provide identified students with learning opportunities to develop their identified areas of talent. In grades 6 through 8, we continue that same purpose to develop that talent, but we also provide opportunities for AIG students to develop that talent and look for areas of interest. We provide them greater opportunity to make choices. And in grades 9-12, students self-select courses, advanced courses, and the purpose is to provide opportunities for students to develop deep knowledge and skills in their area or areas of identification, but also to help them plan for their futures beyond high school. So we have several models of delivery and service for students in Orange County. This is intentional. We want to individualize service based on student need. Some of these models include consultation and collaboration, cluster grouping, push-in or co-teaching, pull-out and resource, and advanced courses in middle and high school. At this time, some of our specialists will share examples of some of the models, and I believe Ms. Pam Francis, you are first.
That's correct. I'm Pam Francis from Cameron Park Elementary, and I want to talk to you just a little bit about consultation and collaboration. As AIG specialist, we do meet with the different PLCs in our schools. I try to meet with my PLCs very regularly. That is for planning purposes. Also, we want to be knowledgeable about horizontal alignment. We know the curriculum for that grade level, so we talk about that with those teachers, making sure we're aligning our instruction with their instruction. But by having a good handle on vertical alignment, we can use that knowledge so that we can accelerate students because we know what's coming and we also know where they came from. So we can understand better how to accelerate those students as needed, how to deepen what they are learning in the classroom, and just building upon what they are already learning in their grade level. So collaboration and consultation with the other teachers in our building is critical, and we do that weekly.
Great, thank you so much, Ms. Francis. And can we go back one slide to slide 15, please, as our specialist shared? Thank you so much. And next, we're going to have Ms. Cindy Sinecroke.
I'd like to add on to what Ms. Francis said, and that we do collaborate weekly with all of our grade level PLCs and teachers. And one reason for that is because with one specialist in each school serving 6 grades, it's impossible to always be in the presence of students who need services. So a lot of that collaboration and planning cooperation with the classroom grade teachers at different grade levels is an effort to put resources into their hands, put choice menus and lessons into their hands that they can use to differentiate tier 1 in their classrooms, so that their students are receiving services even if we're not in the room. And I know there's a big misconception that students are only receiving services when they are face-to-face or eye-to-eye with the AIG teacher, and that's just not true. We do that collaboration and that planning and coordination and sharing of materials to make sure that students' needs are being met all the time. Another way that we do that, because again, staffing is really not adequate for the number of students that we're trying to serve, is through blended learning, and not just in a pandemic, but I've been using blended learning, and I know the other specialists have for years now, flipping the classroom, being able to put assignments out, collect work from students, answer questions from students, even while you are not in the room with them, because 4th graders maybe are doing a unit in reading, and they need to be continuing that learning every single day. But you may not have time in your schedule to meet with all of the 4th grade students every, 4 or 5 days a week. So you might meet with them twice a week, and the other 2 days a week, they're getting their work through the computer. They're getting that blended learning online. Doesn't mean they're not getting services. They're getting their differentiation. They're doing that higher level thinking. They're using a higher level text. But that way, the AIG specialist might be working with 5th graders during that same time slot as well. And honestly, with the number of hours in the day, and the fact that students do have to go home at 3 o'clock, and they also have to have lunch, recess, and specials. If we didn't use blended learning and collaboration and cooperation with our classroom teachers, our students would receive much fewer services. But we do that with fidelity, pushing out materials, instruction, like I said, collecting materials, grading, giving feedback, all digitally, so that we're able to spread ourselves a little bit thinner and reach more students and provide more services and more contact and more opportunity. But I think just wanted to address that the blended learning and the collaboration and cooperation, if a student is not in the room with an AIG teacher, that does not mean they are not receiving services at that time. Our classroom teachers are highly capable of providing differentiated lessons and of supporting students when they are doing blended learning or delivering materials that we have collaborated on with them. So that's something that is used across the district, and it's not new to the pandemic and having to work from home, see students at home or see students through the computer. We've been doing this for years because we need to maximize our time, and flipping the classroom is one way that we can do that.
Thanks for that perspective, Ms. Sinacrope. That was great. And next we have Ms. Beth Liner.
Not working. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, in middle school, it does look a little bit differently than it does in the elementary school. In the way that some of the classes are, they have cluster grouping in them, so that. And what I mean by that is that the student might be in an advanced class, but then there is a cluster which constitutes 5 students or more that are AIG in that specific area. So if it was math, there would be 5 kids in the math class at least that were AIG in that upper level class. And then sometimes I actually push into the class and co-teach with the teacher, or I help plan something with the teacher or the teachers on that grade level that they're going to implement. And then I touch base with them periodically, and then I will pull students out and meet with them as they're working on it, certain days, and just check in with them to make sure they're on the right track and that they're having their questions answered and things like that. So I do a lot of that, and I move around. So I'm not just always in 6th grade, 7th grade, or 8th grade. I'm moving around. So sometimes I'll do a unit with 6th grade, and then I'll move into 7th grade the next time, and then 8th grade. And then while I'm not with one of the other 2 grade levels, I've given them something to work on with their AIG students, so that the students are constantly being challenged and given what they need. So, and then like I said, pull out resource, I do that as well. I'm always in consultation and collaboration with the teachers. That's like just a 24/7 kind of thing, as in the middle schools. So I do attend all the PLCs, and I work to plan with them. If the teacher needs materials, I'll find those materials and pull them. Sometimes I will see that students aren't understanding something that's really higher level, and I'll pull materials and give that same instruction in a different way for that teacher. And so I'm always there as a resource for them. The cluster grouping is very effective. It's really nice to have a small group in a classroom that works together sometimes. And sometimes we pull in students who are not AIG identified students, and they're considered nurtured. And they are added to the group because they're showing that task commitment and that upper level thinking that we like to see, and we want to nurture that. And then sometimes I take those students that are really, really doing well with that, and those are the ones that I'll put on the list for AIG testing. And it's a very effective way to find talent in the schools. Then the other thing is just, a lot of things that I do, like for other core subjects other than math and reading. I do focus more on math and reading, but I do help provide some of the things for the science and social studies teachers. And usually when I'm doing that, I am supporting math wherever I can within the activities that I create with those teachers. And I also am kind of pushing the ELA instruction, because I know what's going on in those rooms. And so I try to make sure that I'm supporting it with some of the activities that I provide for the science and the social studies teachers as well. And then we have, extension and enrichment projects. And weekly during the pandemic, I've been meeting with students especially on Fridays with small groups from every grade level. And I've been providing them with some really cool projects that have kind of supported what they're doing in the classroom. And then I've gotten to keep them motivated and interested, and they've done some really neat things this year. So the blended learning has been really effective. The fact that we had it already in place during the pandemic, it just made it, a little bit more seamless. So it's been a really challenging year, but I think we have definitely thrived in a lot of places as an AIG program. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Liner. And I just want to say a special thanks to these 3 phenomenal teachers. All of our AIG specialists are phenomenal. They are extremely hardworking. They care about all the students in their building. And I just want to say a special thank you to this team, because they are phenomenal and we are very fortunate to have them part of Orange County. All right, thank you. We're going to go to the next slide. So just a quick overview of responsibilities of what an AIG specialist does. Our specialists have already shared some of the day-to-day direct services. They spend at least 70% of their time engaged in those direct instructional services, which could be differentiation, targeting supplemental instruction, or doing individualized instructional plan for the highly gifted students. And then that 30% of their time is engaged in indirect services, and that they attend those PLCs, they develop those resources and materials to push into classrooms. And they also sometimes, when they're co-teaching, they're also observing teachers and offering peer feedback. So that is part of their role as well. Now that you have an overview of our AIG program, excuse me, we would like to share where we are and where we want to go. So I've included data definitions here. If you'd like to review these at a later time, I will give an explanation of each category when we look at the data. Next slide, please. On this slide, I think it's important to note the definitions of overrepresentation. That occurs when the percent of the AIG enrollment is significantly higher than the percent of the total enrollment in the school system. And underrepresentation occurs when the percent of AIG enrollment is significantly lower than the percentage of total enrollment. And I will show you examples on the next slide. Excuse me. So this is the data for all of Orange County. The AIG identified row is the raw number of students identified as AIG. So you can see in our program, we have 19 Asian students identified as AIG, 84 Black students, 162 Hispanic, 3 American Indian, 0 Pacific Islanders, 890 white, and 71 2 or more races, for a total of 1,229 students. This is from our fall 2020 head count. These numbers will be updated with our spring head count, but that does not complete until the end of April. So these are the numbers we have to work with currently. For the section titled Total LEA Enrollment, this is the data for all of our Orange County students. We use this data to determine our over and underrepresented population.
Ms. Mail, we're having a difficult time hearing you, Ms. Mail.
I'm so sorry. You can't hear me?
I
No?
can hear her
Yeah.
okay.
I can hear her great. I don't.
Oh, okay, great. Well, then I guess it's my connection. No worries. I can put the pieces together. Sorry, everyone.
No, please stop me if I'm going too fast or you can't hear me. Please let me know. So I believe I was talking about, in the bottom section, the row of percentage of AIG identified is the percent of the total race ethnicity that is identified as AIG. So for example, and this is where it gets a little tricky and I wanted to explain it. So percent AIG identified, if you look at the Asian population, it says 17.43. So if you look straight up that column, that's 19 of our 109 Asian students are identified as AIG. And then if you continue across the row, the percentage of AIG identified of our Black student population is 8.48, 8.93 Hispanic, 25% American Indian, and then 24.26 of our white population is identified as AIG, 15.17, 2 or more races identified as AIG. Then if you move on the very bottom row, the percent of AIG enrollment, go back, thank you, is the percent of the AIG identified students who are a specific race or ethnicity. So in this case, we are looking at, again, if we start with the Asian students, 19 of the 1,229 AIG students are Asian, which means 1.55% of our AIG enrollment is Asian. If you look straight up in the column and see that our percent of total LEA enrollment is 1.54% Asian, those are pretty, those match pretty well. And that's what we're looking for. That would be considered an equitable representation. Now, when you move over a column to our Black students, they are 6.83% of our identified population, but they are 14.03% of our student population. That is an underrepresentation. There is significant data gap there. And you can see the same holds true with underrepresentation for our Hispanic students. And then our white students are over-identified. We have 72% of our AIG population are white students, while they only make up about 52% of our total LEA enrollment. And we were collecting data. I don't have access to all the data, so I was relying on some help from others. So just a note at the bottom there that we do have 99 students who are duly identified as AIG and EC, and we are working on getting the data for AIG and EL. Okay, now we go to the next slide. So we know that there is work to do based on that data, and we must continue to address these over and under representations. So like us, DPI has recognized there's work to do, and they've created a call to action for equity and excellence in gifted education. So this work is not just going on in Orange County, this is going on across the state. Their call to action was published by the Department of Gifted and Advanced Learning at DPI and includes critical actions to realize equity and excellence in gifted education, a call to changing mindsets, policies, and practices, and a focus on increasing access and opportunities to increase achievement and growth for all. There are 6 critical actions that will guide our work as we move forward and continue to strive for equity and excellence in our local AIG program. These actions call us to reframe our lens on how we view students, their actions and beliefs, how we view schools, our actions and goals, and how we view ourselves, our roles and responsibilities. Action 2, that we are using equitable identification practices and providing opportunities for every student to show us strengths and talents and to mitigate systemic barriers to access gifted education. Action 3, provide a range of services within the program. We must match the educational environment with each student's demonstrated needs. This service must adjust to the student instead of the other way around. We cannot ask the student to adjust to our services. We must foster talent development, cultivating potential in students whose strengths are not yet tapped or readily observable. We need to look into classroom environments and to build capacity in our teachers to recognize non-traditional traits of giftedness. Action 5, that we are collecting and using meaningful data, that we align that information with our actions and our aspirations. And Action 6, providing focused professional learning opportunities for not just our AIG specialists, but for all of our staff, in order to realize equity and excellence in gifted education. As we move forward, we must consider what is equity and excellence in gifted education and what it is not. It is not about the status. It's not about a label or sacrificing the needs of one group of student for another. We must meet the needs of all of our students. We must stop seeing students as at risk and see them as at potential. We do not need multiple hoops for a student to jump through to be identified. We cannot expect perfection. We need to provide multiple opportunities for students to demonstrate their potential. It is not about providing the same services to all. We must personalize service and adjust based on demonstrated needs of students. It is not about students receiving the same content at the same time at the same pace. We must personalize that learning. We do not believe in putting up barriers and hurdles. We want to expand access and opportunities. We are not basing our program on a national comparison. We are basing it on local context and local data. We're not just recognizing students who come with easily recognizable gifts and talents. We need to practice being talent scouts in all of our classrooms and create environments to recognize and develop talents that are not yet tapped. So with this in mind, and knowing that we must continue to improve, we have created action items to guide our next steps with Orange County's AIG program. For school year 21 and 22, we will collaborate with all stakeholders to write the 22-25 AIG plan. We will continue to implement action steps from DPI's call to action. We'll create focused PD for AIG specialists that target those 6 critical actions. And we have already requested the addition of AIG specialists to provide equitable services in all elementary and middle schools. We will continue to research and implement equitable practices for the screening, referral, and identification of students. We will review and modify pathways to expand data points where needed. We will include a parent survey, and we will also offer professional development to each school's need determination team as they review student data. We will continue to focus on talent development and the intentional nurturing of underrepresented populations. We will build capacity in all of our staff to be talent scouts and to look for those non-traditional traits. We will share and maintain a platform for two-way communication between the AIG department and all stakeholders that include, but is not limited to, parents and principals. We will continue to look for and seek opportunities to provide professional development on duly identified students. And at the high school level, there will be an intentional effort to work with counselors to track data of advanced learners and offer assistance with course navigation and future planning. We will continue to intentionally practice continuous improvement. When we know better, we do better. We will look for areas that need to be strengthened and create action steps to address these. We will recruit teachers of color as AIG specialists. We will continue our Orange County PD on the Praxis AIG certification, and we will seek partnerships with universities in recruiting AIG specialists. Dr. Felder has also recommended an external audit of our program to look at our current practices and to obtain feedback prior to writing the next plan. We thank you so much for your time and attention during our presentation, and we appreciate your continued advocacy for all of our students. At this time, Ms. Francis, Ms. Sinnecroper, Ms. Liner, and I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you all so much for providing this information. It's great to hear about this program. Board, questions that you may have? Ms. Hauser?
I'm good. This is very helpful. Thank you so much. It's really thoughtful material. So I'm just going to bring it to today. It's not quite as strategic, a little bit more practical. So if you're an Orange County school parent, maybe a Black Orange County school parent, and your kid is going to start in 3rd grade in the fall, what promise do we offer that they will be properly selected for AIG? And then secondly, there seems to be an inequity in the access to services. And I realize you said it's much bigger than just classes and this and that, but it's a little bit hard, especially some of the challenges that our schools are facing with COVID. So it's a little hard to tell a parent at Central, for example, that your kid's going to get 30 minutes of AIG a week when a parent at Cameron Park is getting 60 minutes of AIG a week. So how does that work in this, and what are there some immediate things that we can promise now?
Thank you for those questions, Ms. Hauser. I think I'm going to address your first question, that if you were a 3rd grader coming into Orange County next year, that's the way I understood you to say that. And so you would miss the screener. We look at those students that come in that do not have the data for the screener. There is an opportunity to take a screener in the fall. We do offer, it's not just a one-shot thing. We can do that evaluation and testing and make sure we gather the data on any student that did not get the screener in the spring. And as far as right now, I'm not sure the board is aware that we do have someone, we have hired a part-time specialist at Central now. So those services, they are getting more services. I know you're aware that that position was vacant as Pathways continues to be vacant currently. So Ms. Hauser, those are great questions. We're continuing to strive to make access and opportunities equitable. And we just appreciate your continued advocacy and asking these questions to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students. Dr. Gaiman, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything to that response, or Dr. Felder.
No, so Ms. Mel, I think that was spot on. I do think making sure, as you did, that noting that we do have someone in that role at Central Elementary School, we know that that was a long and arduous process, but we're excited about the person that's in that position at this point in time. But we do realize, and just like you said, I mean, we do realize that there are areas of growth there, and that's a part of those next steps that you just addressed or laid out as we move forward. So again, we appreciate the questions, and we know that these are areas that we need to continue to strive to grow in.
If I could jump in, Cindy Sinacrope here from HES, kind of sandwiched in between Central and Cameron Park, but they're very different schools, not only in their enrollment, but also in their numbers. So Cameron Park has approximately twice as many students as Central Elementary does. And so there are likely to be much larger groups at Cameron Park. So a student may be getting 60 minutes with the AIG teacher at Cameron Park, but they may be getting 60 minutes with 25 other students in the room. Whereas a student at Central may be getting 30 minutes with an AIG teacher, but they're getting 30 minutes in a group of maybe 5 students or 7 students. So there are vast differences in the number of identified students, and much of that is reflected by enrollment. Last I heard, Central had about 300 students and Cameron Park was over 600. So you can't just go by minutes because you're talking about size of the group, and obviously the student that's in a group with an AIG teacher with less than 10 other students is going to get a lot more individual attention, a lot more specialized instruction, and the teacher can do more with those students than teachers who's in the room with 30 students. So I don't think that you can equitably look at one campus and another and compare minutes. They're apples and oranges.
I'd also like to add to that, if I may, Pam Francis, Cameron Park. One of the ways, Ms. Hauser, that we would address a new student that has walked in the door in 3rd grade, and we haven't been able to do the screener on those students in 2nd grade, is through nurturing. As soon as we see that a child has capability or potential to it would be to their advantage if they were in a group with me. We absolutely begin to nurture that student. That student gets exactly the same services that an identified student would receive from me. So I think that's a great way for us to initially make sure that that student has the opportunities that they need even before they're tested, and to see just what kind of potential that student might have. I nurture well over 100 students a week. So they're not identified, and they come to me for that purpose, for enrichment, just like an identified student would. So I think that's one of our greatest strengths in Orange County, the number of students that we nurture at every school that are not identified.
Ms. Doyle,
I would add on to that. There are districts that operate under the premise of ID equals services, no ID equals no services. We are not like that. We are constantly monitoring feedback from teachers in those weekly PLCs, constantly monitoring data that's coming in from various assessments, MClass assessments, district quarterly assessments, things like that. And we're talking to teachers. And I know that my feeling is, and I think I speak for the rest of the elementary folks and middle school folks in Orange County, is if they're not getting what they need in the regular classroom and they can access what I'm doing, send them. And we don't discriminate based on whether they have a file and a fancy label. Like I tell parents every year in my informational meeting, I serve children, not labels. So I have 25 identified students in 5th grade, but I'm serving 40 students in reading all year long, and approximately that many in math as well. So it's not about whether or not you have a sticker on your folder, on your TUME folder. It's about what you are prepared to do, how hard you're prepared to work, and what you can access, and meeting your needs, rather than these are on my head count, so this is who I'm going to see.
All right. And one other thing, this is Beth Liner at Gravelly. I would like to say, Ms. Hauser, that it doesn't just end in 3rd grade, the testing. Students are allowed to be tested every 2 years. And there are late bloomers. And so there are students who, you know, their brain development just either the two hemispheres of the brain kind of fuse together. And at some point, it happens later for some students than it does in third grade. And so that's where my role would come in. So as a middle school AIG teacher, I have about I think I have 5 schools that feed in, 5 elementary schools that feed into me, into our school every year. And I'm in close contact with those AIG specialists. We have really great communication. And so we meet and then transition over those students. And they give me lists of students to watch. And then from those lists, I will work with those students and look at their scores and keep up with them and nurture them when they're in our school. And then those are the ones that often I am the one testing them in middle school. So the testing process doesn't just end, and the identification process doesn't end in elementary and it's a shut door. It's still open, and there are multiple pathways to come back in and do it in middle school again. So I wanted to kind of put that out there for everybody.
Ms. Doyle, did you have a question?
I did, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was really helpful. And I had a question about diversity of staff in the among our AIG specialists. And I'm glad we're talking a lot about the history in our district, and we don't want the AIG screening to have like a gatekeeper type of culture, which we likely have had, at least in the past. And so I'm just curious, because the AIG teachers I know from my children's schools are all white people, and I'm just curious, how long have we been trying to recruit diverse staff? And I appreciate the specifics that were mentioned for seeking partnerships with universities, but how are we doing in like really fostering, we know that students of color benefit from having teachers who look like them, and how are we today fostering that sense of belonging for all students? And what are we doing both at our school level and at our like district staff level to have that diversity piece and the equity piece?
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. That is a great question. And it is a tough question. I'll be really honest, because when we start thinking about recruiting teachers of color so students can see themselves in that teacher. This year I was not able to do it because of just the state that we're in, but last year we did have a district-wide PD that was open for all of our teachers to come and to participate in, I think it was 3 or 4 Saturdays, and do a Canvas course to get their AIG certification. So we did offer that district-wide. And as far as recruitment goes, I would just say that we open it to everybody. We do, I get a list from HR that provides me information of students and of staff in the district that have their AIG certification. And that's one thing that we recommend when we are placing students, is that they're placed in classrooms with teachers that have AIG certification. And some of those classroom teachers are teachers of color. From our AIG specialist standpoint, there are 10 of us, and one of them is a teacher of color. It is something that we need to work on, and we recognize that. So I appreciate that question. Again, Dr. Gammon or Dr. Felder, I didn't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I think, and I can be very brief. I mean, and this is a fantastic question, Ms. Doyle. We actually have had this specific conversation multiple times as a team. I think if I could use a parallel, when I think of like our most recent efforts with our new literacy tutoring program, I think there have been times in the past where we have sent out Connect Ed calls. We've kind of done these universal ways to reach out to folks, but we haven't been as intentional as really truly identifying and reaching out to people on an individual level. And I think that goes for this situation as well. Like it's one thing to be able to hire a diverse staff base, but then once you have those folks in-house, how do you continue to not only recruit them, but how do you continue to develop them and expose them on a more personal level to these opportunities, such as an AIG certification, a licensure? And I think that that's something from a human resources standpoint that our team has been very open about, making sure that we're very strategic in that way. And I don't know if Ms. Cunningham Brown or others are on, but I think they can probably speak more in that lane.
if I could jump in, I'll tell you, you know, Pathways has Cindy Sinacrote from HES. Sorry, I'm not sure everybody is seeing who's speaking, but Pathways position has been open for a year. I mean, it's hard to find people with AIG certification who want the job. So we're almost down to you know, like what's out there. And the honest to God truth is there aren't very many candidates, period. So when you get a qualified candidate, you know, you try to hire them, but we've got a position and a half that have been vacant for a year. So I mean, that speaks to the fact that there's a shortage of AIG teachers, and it gets to a point where, you know, if you only get 2 applicants and they're both white, are you going to leave the position vacant, or are you going to get someone in that school?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Sinacrop. You are certainly spot on with regards to the shortage of AIG teachers, but also just a shortage of teachers of color in general. And this is a national issue. And what you will hear, board members, at your next meeting will be an update on very deliberate and intentional steps that the district is about to engage in with regards to diversity hiring. And so we know that this is a concern. We know what the research says, as you mentioned, Ms. Doyle, you're spot on with that. We also know that there's a shortage of educators of color in this country. So we have to ramp up our efforts, and you will definitely hear more about that at your next meeting.
Thanks, Miley.
Thank you, Dr. Felder, and thank you for this presentation, everyone. I want to ask, well, first of all, just going back to Ms. Hauser's point earlier about the amount of face-to-face time and pull-out situations that students at different schools get, I do think as we are analyzing this, it would be really good to get like school by school level data, understand, you know, and come up with some level of sort of like core commitment or core expectation in terms of number of hours, understanding that there's all this other complexity around the size of ratios, and so the amount of time students get within those groups. I do think understanding that landscape and figuring out purposefully how we want to sort of set up that core of time would be good. I'm not quite sure how to phrase this question. So I think that we all believe, I hope we all believe, that giftedness exists in the same proportions in all student groups, regardless of race or ethnicity or language, etc. And this underrepresentation, overrepresentation has existed for a very long time, and not only in Orange County schools. The question that I have, knowing how valuable those experiences when you are pulled out are in terms of real intellectual challenge and very interesting projects and things that really, I believe, are developing students in really important ways. Like the question I want to ask is, like, how can we justify continuing to have a program that, even though it is not the intent, the function of it is that we are segregating students within schools and providing disproportionately white students with higher levels of intellectual challenge, that's the function of it. I say this valuing AIG very much, but sort of as a, if there are similar proportions of students who are actually gifted and we're not serving them in similarly proportioned ways, how can we justify continuing to do that? It seems sort of the opposite of equity to me.
That's one for Gravely. I was just gonna say that I think that what you're, you know, if you look at it that way, then you'd have to look at it like, well, then why are we providing, you know, special ed services for students who have special ed? And why are we providing ESL services for students who speak, you know, speak a second language? And so I feel like, you know, I do feel, you know, what you're saying, and I do understand what you're saying. And I do think that we do a really great job, but we could always do better, obviously. And we are working on that. That is something that is in our plan every year and that we are working on. But I don't feel like you can shut that door, because then you're looking, if you look at our world and the structures in our world, we have Ivy League universities, we have Rhodes Scholars. I mean, we do have high level, you know, people out there, intelligent people in this world, and we really need to be fostering that so that they can go out and represent Orange County in a really positive light. Just like the young woman who just worked on the virus vaccine, and it was from Hillsborough. We need more people like that, and we need to be there to foster that and that creativity and that interest. So I don't feel like it's a good thing to close the door on that, because then, you know, you can't just, you know, pigeonhole it into different groupings, and we don't want to provide for this one group, but because then that's not equitable to the students who really have that task commitment and that creativity and that sense of wonder and wanting to learn and further, you know, their education.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard. Just before anybody else responds, I meant it as a provocation, right? Like, I think that those things that are provided in AIG are incredibly valuable to students, and I just don't know what it's going to take for the students populations to actually represent the student populations in the school. And so
I also think nurturing is where we are getting to that number. All you saw on the data were our identified students. I know for myself, and I know for the rest, especially elementary, and I know also at the middle school levels, we all are nurturing students to build them up and to get them to the place where they can be formally identified, but they are still receiving the services. So if we took our nurturing data and planted it inside of that data that Sarah showed you or shared with you, you would see a huge thrust towards meeting the needs of more of our students of color, and making sure that we are getting those students there, and that we are looking for them. We are pursuing them. And that's something that the raw data on identified only students doesn't show you. What we're doing in our nurturing programs is phenomenal. And K through 2, every single child gets those thinking skills programs, every child. So it's not just a pull-out program in K2, it's a whole group thinking skills type program. So I do think that if we could add in all of those students that we see in a day that are not identified, you would see the effort of us pursuing those students who may not show us their giftedness in a standard way. I think Ms. Mel in several of the slides shared that we have to look at students differently, and we have to be able to see giftedness in different ways, because all students don't share it the same way. So, you know, I think that if we could look at the whole piece of data, you would have, yes, we still have more white students than students of color, but we're working very hard to make that different.
Yeah. And if I could just add, thank you so much, Ms. Francis. So the research tells us that when we see the data, the way that our data looks, which again, not to excuse it in any way, but this is a national issue. You know, one of the places that you start is looking at how are you identifying children in the first place? And so you did see that listed as a next step. So we have to go back and look at our identification processes, protocols, what all is involved in that. And that's just one of the things that we need to do. But those action items, those next steps are aligned with research. Those are the things that you do when your data looks the way that our data does, because we know that there is giftedness across all populations, and we know that there's talent in all populations. And so if we're not seeing it in our data, we have to start with ourselves, and it's not the children, it's not them. We have to start by looking at how are we identifying children, what opportunities are we giving children. We know that cognitive assessments assess what you've had access to. And so if you've not had access to the ability to think creatively and think critically, problem solve, and those types of engagements, you're not going to demonstrate that on a test. And is a test alone, one single point of data, the most sufficient way to identify? The research would tell us no. It's not the most proficient way to identify for any child. So we are looking at the research. The research is consistent. It's very clear cut. And so that's where we're starting. And you will see that reflected in our next plan.
If I could jump in, Cindy from HES again. You're not going to write a gifted plan that's going to erase 400 years of systemic racism in this country in 3 years like that. We are working aggressively. We've been recognized by DPI. We have amended our ID qualifications every time. I've been in Orange County for 9 years. Every time we rewrite this plan, we amend our qualifications and our screening processes in order to cast a wider net and catch more underserved populations. We have been held up as an example in that regard. But the fact of the matter is, we can't write a gifted plan that will erase poverty and the effects of poverty on students of color. Okay, we can do everything we can to catch those kids at a young age in K2 and nurture them and try to get them to realize their full potential, but we cannot change all of society's ills in one gifted plan. And with 10 teachers, we can't change the world. I mean, we can make a big difference, but we can't change 400 years of systemic racism and inequity in 3 years in a gifted plan. What we need is the district stepping forward and seeking out more teachers of color for the regular classroom, more teachers of color for AIG teachers, and trying to work on mitigating those discriminatory factors in the community, because we can't change children's home lives. We can't change their socioeconomic status. And those are big factors in how kids perform in school, and everybody knows it. And we can work as hard as we can, and we have been very conscious of this. And like I said, we've been recognized by DPI for our efforts in amending our identification process. And we are doing everything that we feel possible and constantly examining it, including gathering kids by local norms according to subgroups. So top 5% of a child's subgroup, rather than top 5% in the county or against state metrics or against national metrics. We're doing everything that we can in order to find those kids. But Ms. Hauser, you talked about, why would we keep a program that's inequitable? Do you want to have the students that find the cures for COVID or the vaccine for COVID or the cures for cancer or that are tomorrow's leaders? Or would you like to shut them down and not give them what they need because not everybody is able to access it? That would be unfair to those students. That would be inequality in a different way.
So Ms. Sinecroft, I certainly appreciate what you've shared, but I beg to differ with regards to the ability of a school to impact a child, regardless of what their socioeconomic status is, their race, their mother's education, etc. And so the research is clear that schools can impact student achievement, can impact what students have access to and opportunities. Best practice speaks to that as well. I hear what you're saying, and I know where you're coming from, and I appreciate that. But I just need to hang up my shoes then if we can't impact that. And so again, research certainly speaks to that the number one in-school factor for student achievement is the teacher. And there are countless schools that serve students who have a greater impact, say, than our students, and are making a difference for those students. And so can it be done? It absolutely absolutely positively can be done.
No, I agree with you completely. We do make a difference, but are we going to change 400 years of history in one gifted plan? That's a stretch. We are doing the best that we can. We are working hard towards that end, but there are some things that we can't fix.
I don't, and I don't, and if I could, yeah, well, yeah, and I don't, in the original question and what Ms. Smiley, or the point that she made, I think that the task is much bigger than 10 AIG specialists. And I think you noted that, Ms. Senator Crow. I think one thing, and I have to, there's a self-reflection that has to happen for all of us. If I go back 14 years and I think of my undergraduate experience and then getting into education, the huge flaw with the system that creates this inequity where there seems to be this standalone is that just a regular general education teacher like myself, when I come out of college to go into the field, I'm not adequately prepared at that level to meet the needs of every child and to provide those nurturing experiences that we are starting to work toward. That's the core instructional lane that we would get the greatest measure from for all kids. And when we talk about students that are going to be the ones that are our doctor scientists, that's every student has the capacity and capability to do that. But what we have to do is work in tandem, not only with our universities with undergraduate programs, but we also, when folks get into the field and the profession, we are learning. That's a part of this process. It's that problem solving process. We're learning that core instructional experience, every classroom that a child goes to on a daily basis, the teacher needs to be adequately prepared in that room to do the very best they can to assist the fine folks that are on this call that are talking about that AIG, kind of experience, because it should happen every day in every lane. And that's not the fault of a teacher. And I include myself in that when I was in the classroom. It's not the fault of a teacher who maybe hasn't had that adequate preparation, but it's our duty to make sure that we continue to recognize that and grow in that area. And I think that over time, that's when we will stop, or we will start to limit that divide, because then it becomes the core instructional experience, as Ms. Mel noted, truly is this differentiated experience where every child has the opportunity to be something that they have the full capacity in them to be. And so I think that we all are moving toward that in the right way. I think we all collectively on this call believe that, but it's the hard work. It is the hard work of equity that I believe that we're facing right now, and we're digging in together. And I'm very proud to see that, but there's a lot of work moving forward.
So it is 5:10. We have about 5 more minutes for this topic, and I know it's hard to pull away from really thought-provoking and issues that we're all really passionate about. I know Mr. Atherton has a question, and then Ms. Hauser, and then we'll follow up with any last questions.
All right. So I wanted to thank everyone for the overview and also all the innovative ways that y'all had to work, especially given all the challenges we have in our district. One of the things that I wanted to say, I guess, is more a comment than a question. The first thing is, I think we've got to look at school levels as we're identifying, because we didn't cover it in this presentation, but in our packet, you can definitely see that there are schools that have significantly less identified students. And of course, there's an allotment of that. And I think if we're really serious about this, we need to go into each school and look at how do we increase it in each of the schools. That's just my feeling based on the numbers that I'm seeing. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity there. And I understand that we don't have an AIG teacher in each of the schools. I think we need to get to that so we can, definitely focus and grow that. But the comment I had really was, one of the feedback I get, besides others that have been brought up, is parents just don't know that they can request to be tested or that there's that opportunity. And then at the same time, I've had many parents tell me, oh, I got the letter that my child is being considered, and then they get that other letter that says, sorry, you weren't, and I think some of this, we're not informing our community about how this works, you know, unless you're in. It seems like, you know, I've had people describe it as a secret club, you know, or a special club versus us being more proactive and just explaining so people understand and they know they could be opportunity. I mean, I learned about today, I didn't realize that, you know, it's every 2 years that you can be tested. You know, that's just something I learned today. I didn't realize what the timing of that is. But it seems like we've got to figure out a way to engage our parents in this process. And then also, you know, as parents get these letters, you know, there's context to it, you know, because a lot of parents that have told me this say, hey, my child got a 4 on the end of grade test and they didn't get in the AIG. Why is that? And so anyway, just some feedback from some, you know, some of the parents that I've heard that have gone through this. And I just think we've got to get a better way to engage our community, inform them, and let them know, you know, what the opportunities are. And that way we can also build the program as well.
Ms. Hauser?
Yeah, that's a great point, Mr. Atherton. I just want to go back on a couple of things that I've heard today. I'll start by saying, I think we all believe in something that's developing children to their fullest potential. I think we all believe that, and we all believe in that in an equitable way. And we're not, you know, and I think we're, at least for me, but I think we're all looking for a way to hold ourselves accountable. Now, not just for words on a page, but accountable in terms of who's selected, who's being developed, and how that's being done. So I think that's a challenge, and if it's not minutes and AIG, what is it? So we need help with that. And not for 3 years from now, but starting now. Second thing is when we talk about teachers of color, I'm never sure who we're talking about. And I wondered if we might begin to distinguish Black teachers from bilingual teachers versus others, but because, and the essence of my question is, I love Ms. Francis' view of changing the way we looked at giftedness, and there's a cultural bias in it for sure. And is there a way to, as you all talked about working with all your teachers, is there a way to work with all our teachers, not just our AIG teachers, but all the teachers in our schools to say, help us identify giftedness in a culturally relevant way so we can really nurture kids. So I'm really interested in that too. So I'll leave it there. But, you know, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much.
Ms. Stevens?
Madam Chair, yes. Well, I wanted to say that I'm not just sitting here silent. I did have a question, and it was the same as Ms. Doyle's, because that's a very, very important question, because on the PowerPoint, it mentioned about recruiting teachers of color as AIG specialists. It's very concerning to me. And it's not like the past 2 or 3 years. It's been ongoing for 15 years or more. So I don't know what magic wand Dr. Felder is going to have, but I do believe that she'll make it happen, because when my daughter was coming along, there was issues then. So I certainly hope that we will have some more representative staff of color. And even if they're Black or Latinx or whatever, I think it's important to have more than just white AIG specialists. And we just have to try harder and work harder at it. Thanks a lot.
Ms. Hauser, final thoughts, please.
Final thought. One of the programs that we have that's doing really well with our Latinx community is AVID. And we're picking kids up a little bit later, but we're finding it's a program that's really moving them in an accelerated way up the curve. I just don't know if there's a way for our AIG teams to talk to our AVID teams and say, is there something to learn from each other?
One last thing I just wanted to request, Ms. Francis, I believe it was you that brought up if we were to see the nurturing data, that we might see some differences, and I wonder how easy it would be for us to see that. If that is easily accessible, I think the board would love to see it, so maybe we could get it in an update if possible. I'm seeing thumbs up from Ms. Mill.
Yes,
Awesome.
Ms. McKenzie, I've created a report that is available to you that Dr. Felder can share with you, and it has the data breakdown per school for identified and nurtured. So yes, that report is ready to go and ready to be sent. And if I may,
Awesome.
we're running short on time, I just want to say how much I appreciate this conversation. We are all passionate advocates for children, whether it's gifted or not gifted. We just want to do what's best for kids. And so all of your questions, thought-provoking, insightful, and yes, I just appreciate the advocacy and the conversation. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it. And we appreciate your dedication to the students of Orange County also.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda this afternoon is choice programs. And I will turn it back over to Dr. Felder and I believe Dr. Dawson as well.
Dr. Dawson?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm trying to avoid the sun, but not avoid the sun. So good afternoon, Chair McKenzie, Vice Chair Stevens, Superintendent Felder, board members, and the community. From this past year and a half, navigating COVID, we're learning about our strengths as a school system, the challenges we've overcome, and also learning about the opportunities that lie ahead. One national thought on how we should continue after COVID is to think differently and to do differently. So as Orange County Schools continues to reflect and strategize on keeping with our strengths and learning from our challenges, we look for opportunities to do differently in the best interest of our students and their families. And at this moment, I'm honored to share with you how we can provide choice to our families differently. In doing so, we strive for improvement, parental power, opportunity, hope, and social fairness for our children, especially for our families who have not traditionally had access in the past. So I think that quote on this slide is profound, and we just wanted to share that with you. And then if we could go to the next slide. I'm trying to get to my slide. Here we go. Okay, thank you, Ms. Bunch. So why choice, you might ask? As the quote states, that every child deserves an effective, challenging, and motivating education. And because each student has their own unique set of talents, interests, and challenges, having a variety of options in education is crucial. And we just finished talking about, our AIG students, but all of our students, they have a right to options that best fit the way they learn and their interests. And so as we work to minimize any negative impact on our students as a result of a challenging school year due to COVID, we are working to design the best fits and as many options allowable to suit the needs of our students. And before we get started, it is important to note the following, that at this time, we are only requesting recommendations for us to explore the choice options that we are about to share with you this afternoon, and that these are research-based choices aligned to the skills and the development of our children that they will need for their futures. And so, as the timeline depicts, the summer, like from what's decided here, throughout the summer, we would connect with our school teams and our community to really start exploring, where's the interest in the recommendations that we're making tonight? Where's where are the numbers? Like, where do our families want to send their kids to school? And so we would return to the board after the findings of this exploration period with the choice recommendations that would have the input of our school communities and our family communities that we would like to recommend that we offer starting the year of 22-23, because we would need this full next year to plan and prepare to make sure that we're properly prepared for the launch. But why it's important to start now is that if our families are to have choice and to know what their choice options are, we want to make sure that we have developed enough of our programs and communicated well enough with our families so that they know what they would be applying to for choice when it comes to choice season with the winter of 21-22. And so we want to make sure that we have plenty of time to do that. So if again, this is a full year exploration, plan, prepare. And before we go any further, we do want to note here that there are two specific policies related to student assignments. So if we go to the next slide, that will impact access to our schools, including equitable access to our choice programs. So we are currently reviewing these policies to identify any potential barriers to equitable access, and we will work with the board's policy committee on any amendments should there be some, and then we will of course come back and present to the full board. So if we go to the next slide, let's take, as we start the full presentation, we want to remind the board and the community that at the end of this presentation, what we will be requesting is that the board approve the superintendent's request to explore these new choice recommendations and to also approve the recommendation to start the redistricting review process, because we know that there has been some work done in the past. There has been some concern around that, and we just want to seek approval to start that review again. Currently, we do have 4 choice schools offerings, choice offerings following these themes. At Central Elementary, we do have the Engineer for Excellence theme. At Eflin Cheeks Elementary, we have the Global Studies theme. And then the year-round calendar is offered at our Hillsborough Elementary School. And then the only high school option currently is our IB diploma program at Cedar Ridge High School. And so onto the next slide, let's start.
Dr. Dillison, I'm so sorry if I could just interrupt just to bring clarity. And so the only proposed action would be for tonight would be around the request to further explore these options. So I just wanted to make that clear. That's the only request for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. And so these slides, we're done with that. So I will try to take that out as I speak. So thank you for that clarification, Dr. Felder. So let's start with Central Elementary. It was established as a choice school in 2012 with a STEM focus. And at that time, that was the it concept of that time, right? So it was new and exciting. And while it might have been popular at that time, as you'll see that 5-year trend in the table, there's very little interest from families currently. And so it's worth noting here the under enrollment at Central Elementary as well. So we have to take a look at why families are not choosing the Engineering is Elementary program that's being currently offered at Central. And then if we take a look at what's being offered at Eflin Cheeks, this is one of our newer choice options, and it was established in 2016. And here again, we're seeing very low number of applicants over the past 5 years. But what is hard to tell here is it because the families aren't interested in the theme, or is it that the number of open seats has been minimal due to the overcapacity of the school? Like for next year, we only were able to open up 5 seats for choice. So when you have, an over-enrolled school like Eflin, it really then isn't a choice option when so few seats are available. So again, we have kind of 2 extremes. Central is way under capacity, and now we have Eflin that's way over capacity. And our last, but not least, elementary offering is at Hillsborough Elementary, and they offer the year-round calendar. It was established in 1996 with the original intent to provide a non-traditional learning model to assist our low-performing students. Unfortunately, it most likely is no longer serving this original intent, and we will need to we'll discuss further why this might be happening a little bit later. And so what you see here, though, this is one choice program of the 4 that we're going to see a wait list. We have a high interest in the year-round calendar, and the school is slightly over capacity. So we do have some limited, seats to just those that we can offer, of course. And so every year we've had a waiting list. And in 2018-19, if we're not seeing a wait list, it's because there were families that declined their seat, and we were able to offer those in the wait list that seat. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see our high school choice option that we have. And it's at Cedar Ridge, of course. And currently we only accept 40 incoming 9th graders from outside of the attendance zone into the International Baccalaureate Diploma program, which actually starts in grade 11. Now, the capacity that you'll see there does not include the new J-Wing, as we know that will increase their building capacity by another 500. So, we have about 112 students currently, juniors and seniors, that are in the program. So if you think about 40 of those are, from in each cohort are from outside of Cedar Ridge. So when you take a look at the next slide, we will notice some strengths of our choice schools, and they have some challenges. If what is being offered as a choice is offered at all the schools, such as our STEM, because it's really important that all of our students receive STEM education. And so now what used to be a boutique offering is now being offered across all elementary. It's no longer, that unique factor that once was at Central Elementary. So therefore it really doesn't become, a choice. And because everyone has it at all of the schools. And if there are no or very limited open seats, like at Eflin, then it's really not a choice either, because, if you're only opening up 5 seats, then that means only 5 families, are having access. So is that really choice? And then I think most importantly, if our families can't get their children to the choice school, then is it really a choice option? And we'll take a look at that in a moment. And if our choice schools are not properly staffed to support the fidelity of the choice program, then are we really setting them up for success? So let's just go back to take a look at the impact of lack of transportation on the next slide. Because, we talk about equitable access. What these slides demonstrate is the lack of equitable access when we do not provide transportation. And those 4 choice options that we just shared that are currently in our system, we do not provide transportation. And especially look at the impact of the diversity and the inclusivity-ness of our schools when we're not doing this. Now, Eflin Cheeks and Central Elementary School, they both have attendance zones. So majority of those students in this breakdown of the demographics, they're assigned to these zones, and they're going there because that's their attendance zone. And very few, as we saw, are actually coming from outside of the district. And then you see Hillsborough Elementary, which actually has no assigned attendance zone, and students attending there are coming from all across the district. But majority of those families, they're able to provide, well, all of them are providing their children their own transportation. They're driving their kids to school. So if you're a family that doesn't have the means to drive your child to Hillsborough Elementary, then it's really not a choice. So when you don't offer transportation, it is not a choice, and therefore it is not providing equitable access for our students. So let's take a look at, and I think, what's really prevalent here on this slide, that green bar represents our white students, and then the gold bar you see is our Black students, and then the gray bar is our students that have more than one race, the ethnicity, and then the orange is our Asian students, and then our the gray was our Hispanic and Latinx communities students, and then the dark blue was our 2 or more, and then of course the lighter ones, it's hard to see, but it's our Pacific Islander groups. And there's one group, it's really hard to see because we have such minimal number of students, is our American Indian students, our Native American students. So you can see the diversity in our attendance zone schools, and then you see the lack of diversity in our district-wide, no transportation, but they drive themselves, district-wide choice options. So, you know, we've got to take a look at how we can change that. And part of that solution we're saying is that we need to provide transportation in order to provide equitable access for all of our families. So if we go to the next slide. Okay. As we continue to think differently, as Ms. Bunch gets ready for us to view a video, as we continue to think differently in how we are offering our families choice and what choices we are offering, we reviewed the research to identify several ways we can reimagine our choice offerings to be more relevant in preparing our children for their future. So we'd like to share this quick video with you to show why we have to do what we are recommending. And so Ms. Bunch, if you could please play the video.
And can I please get everyone to mute?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Bunch. So as you can see, when we take a look at what lies ahead for our children's future, very highly skilled, technically based, critical thinking, problem solving kind of careers for our children. But if we continue to teach today's students as we taught yesterday, we rob them of tomorrow. John Dewey said that. So let's not do that. So let's go to the next slide. What if we revitalize the STEM focus at Central Elementary to one not offered at every other elementary school? What if we created an artificial intelligence lab where our K-5 students could learn about robotics, coding, virtual and augmented reality, engineering, and space exploration? In our children's lifetime, they will be able to take trips to planets other than Earth. They are already recruiting for Mars. This would provide Central Elementary students and their families the uniqueness choice factor, right? That is no longer there because all of the schools are offering a lot of what Central is currently offering. So let's give them that uniqueness factor by offering this AI lab. And if you look at the picture, partnering with Robot Lab, we would actually set up a classroom space that looks very much just like this lab. And I do want to note that the children that are in these pictures, they don't have masks on because these are photos from the website that I took off from their site, and this was pre-COVID. So just want to note that. And then, you know, to make sure that our children have access to continue on after elementary school, but also for other students that maybe didn't choose Central for their elementary years, but they would also want to have access to the AI lab and those types of teaching, right? That we're proposing to convert one of the middle schools to offer an AI lab at the middle school level, and also then to offer that as a new choice option. So to create a feeder pattern, but another entry point, because, you know, families that didn't do it K-5, this is another entry point for them to do it for middle school, to pursue their computational thinking way of learning, because that might be their strength and that might be their interest. And as a reminder that we would first explore with the school teams and the community to determine which would be the best middle school that would, you know, fit this program and the way that the kids are feeding into that from Central. So there are lots of things to explore to figure out what's the best way in moving forward. And we definitely would want the input of our school teams and our community. And again, this would not launch until the 2022-23 school year. And if we go to the next slide, and again, here at Eflin Cheeks, we're not saying to change their theme. We're saying, hey, you know what? Why not give it a revitalized approach to a global theme? And so we are proposing offering the primary years pathway of the International Baccalaureate program. And as we heard earlier, that Cedar Ridge actually offers the diploma program. And so we would be starting offering at the primary years in preparation for them to complete the full scope. And the IB program is a student-centered program. It offers an international curriculum focused on developing the inquiry, the inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring young people that we want our students to become, motivated to succeed. And the IB gives students a distinct advantage by building their critical thinking skills, nurturing their curiosity, and their ability to solve complex problems, all the skills that they will need for their future. And to, you know, just like we talked about for Central Elementary, to provide these students the opportunity to continue their studies. And again, another entry point for students who might not have participated in the primary years, they too then say, well, you know what, I might like to participate in the IB International curriculum. And so what we are proposing here is to convert another one of our middle schools then to offer the middle years pathway, and that this would again be a district-wide choice option. And as we presented, by offering these new middle school choice options, we're creating what we call feeder patterns, and to allow students a continuation of their elementary themes into their middle school, but allowing new middle school students to have an opportunity. And to connect with this theme, if we go to the next slide, we would like to offer our families the access to a year-round calendar to continue on as well from Hillsborough Elementary, the opportunity to continue on that schedule, but also to offer additional families that didn't think that, was the best fit for them for that calendar year, year-round calendar for their elementary, but they may want that for their middle school students. And their middle school students want to seek a more balanced school calendar. So we want to open up that opportunity for them. And so that's why we would propose converting our third middle school to a year-round calendar as well. And we know that we have families opting out of Orange County schools, seeking alternative options to meet their needs. And for instance, we do have families that opt out of Orange County after attending Hillsborough to attend the Expedition School, in part because Expedition offers that modified school year that we do not offer. And we want all of our families, all of our middle school families, to have a choice of a year-round calendar. And we know we've previously tried this model. And so as part of our exploration, we would want to seek what of that worked well, what didn't work well. As we continue to explore, is this an option that our families actually even want for the middle school years? And so that's why it's really important to remember that we would not do any of this work without exploring what is it that our community wants, what is it that our students and our families want. What we're doing here is recommending our research-based programs that we feel would push our developing of our kids to become critical thinkers and giving them new approaches, right? And in programs that are more relevant and connected to what they're going to need for their future. And so we don't want to leave the high schools behind, because as we know, we only have one choice option at Cedar Ridge. And so starting with Cedar Ridge, we would like to recommend expanding our choice offerings there. We would like to recommend offering the remaining of the IB pathways at Cedar Ridge High School. We would add the second half of the middle years program, because the middle years program goes from grades 6 through 10. And remember, the current program that Cedar Ridge has, the diploma program, starts grade 11. And so to not have that break, we would recommend adding the second half of the middle year program to Cedar Ridge, and then actually also adding their career-related program, because we know that we're preparing students to be college and career ready. So by adding the career-related program and the middle year, what we're now doing by adding the additional primary years and the middle years to a middle school, we've now created an opportunity for our students to have the full K through 12 IB experience. And in that process, what we're actually working to do is developing what we call the IB learner profile. And that profile, aims to develop our students as inquirers, to be knowledgeable, to be thinkers, communicators, principled, open-minded, caring, risk takers, balanced, and reflective. I think that those are many of the qualities that our families would want for their children. But not to leave out the rest of our high schools, we have a couple more. So because of course at all of our schools, it doesn't matter if it's our pre-K through high school, we will always strive to offer grade level rigorous curriculum taught by quality teachers, and put those three together with our student. That's what makes for a successful student, right? So what we would like to do at Orange High School is we would like to recommend another quality and rigorous international curriculum, and to make same as at Cedar Ridge and at Orange, we would like to make these district-wide choice options, so that even though I'm assigned to Cedar Ridge, if I wanted to go to Orange for the Cambridge Assessment International Education Program, I could. And the Cambridge education, it's similar to IB, but it is not the same. Their approaches are a little bit different. But as far as the outcome, they're similar in the sense that we're trying to prepare Cambridge program, preparing our students for life, helping them to develop an informed curiosity and a lasting passion for learning. And they work to, we will actually shape the Cambridge curriculum, because there's a little bit more flexibility with the Cambridge curriculum in what we want to teach them the IB a little bit. And so we will shape it to how we want our students to learn, helping them to discover new abilities and of course the wider world, right? And Cambridge students develop the skills they need to achieve at school, university, and work. And all of our schools, they will continue to offer advanced placement, also referred to as AP courses. And by expanding the IB program at Cedar Ridge, adding Cambridge at Orange High School, what we're doing is we are creating additional choices for students to earn college credits, because both of these programs, the students do have to take an exam, just like the AP courses, but should they, and when they do, and when they pass, they also earn college credits. So that's the program that we would like to recommend at Orange High School. And again, nothing we would do without involving our teachers and community at Orange to say, is this the right fit? Is this the program that we feel would offer what we're looking to offer, that rigorous international curriculum, college credit earning program that would meet the needs of our students. And then we know we have Partnership Academy, and Partnership Academy, we would like for them to apply to become a cooperative innovative high school via DPI, and to convert to become a middle college high school. In doing so, it will allow the Partnership Academy team to continue serving the students they currently serve, but also by becoming a middle college high school, providing more access to the students they currently serve, as well as offering another additional pathway for earning their high school diploma, but in addition, earning their associate degree or a certificate that will allow them readiness for college and or career. So this alternative pathway allows our students, because you know what we know is that there are jobs that do not require 4-year degrees to get started. We know that, and these are high wage, highly skilled jobs. And so we want to make sure that the students, that they know that that's what they want. We want to give them that access. At the same time, we also know these are young people and they have a full life ahead of them, and they don't know what they will want to do as they continue their careers. They may want to go back to school and be able to get a 4-year degree. And honestly, I have to recommend that they do, because there's research also out there that shows that those who fared the best still have a 4-year degree. And so we want to make sure that we set our students up for that by making sure that our students enroll in college transfer pathways as they're working toward their associate degrees, because as they select which 4-year college they want to go to, these college credits would transfer with them. So, this is creating an opportunity for our students to attend high school, and for us to provide that scaffolding and support that many of our students need to be able to navigate and learn how to navigate the college world, to ensure their success and completion of an associate degree or the certificate, because the certificate programs will get them straight into high-paying jobs. And throughout this process, they would have opportunities to have a career coach, job shadow, and do internships and apprenticeships. But this isn't the only program that will allow that. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's why we would like to recommend Partnership Academy convert to a middle college high school to provide our students more access to higher degree options with more support. So there is a little outlier here on the next slide, because we felt it noteworthy to include, because we know the benefits of dual language, right? So we want to recommend that we revisit how we are offering the 50-50 two-way Spanish dual immersion program at New Hope Elementary School, and see if there are any ways that we can make that more accessible to more students. So we did want to include that here in our presentation, because there are such benefits to bilingual, bilingual. Yes, being able to speak more than one language. Sorry about that. Clearly, I need to learn another language. Okay, and then we're almost done. But what we would also like to share is that we are reviewing our CTE offerings, our career technical education, no longer our vocational, because as you saw in the video, these are very highly technical, skilled jobs and fields. So we would like to review what we're offering, and to make sure that what we are offering is the most relevant. We would like to look at how we can expose our students to career options that they may not even be aware of. So for instance, like if you look at the smart farming in artificial intelligence, like the way that robotic arms can now like monitor and, you know, support our agriculture industry, and, you know, taking a look at how we are using humanoid robots. And I think you saw in the video all the different possibilities, right? So we want to make sure that our students are aware that those are even options for them. And then aligning to that, are we giving them access to the courses that they would need to pique their interest, but also then to get them prepared for however they would like to go into career or college. And so we would also like to provide our students more choice by taking a look at our Cte offerings and some of the ones that, especially the ones that we know our kids are really interested in right now. There's a high interest in fire technology and some of our law and justice programs. And so how can we make those more accessible? And then of course, we're continuing our looking at our partnership with our community college to expand access and more access for our students to the different programs they offer. And so, you know, I think the quote by Mr. Riley, our former Secretary of Education, I think it's just so relevant, right? Because we're preparing our students for jobs that we don't even know that exist yet. And so, you know, the best way to do that is making sure that what we do know, we expose our kids, but there are some basic skills that regardless of what the jobs will be that our students will need, such as critical thinking skills, how to collaborate, how to question, right? How to be like inquisitive, like all those skills we want to embed in our students. And that's why we selected the programs that we did, because that it will foster that in our kids. So no matter what their future and their jobs will be, our kids will be ready. And so just this one last slide, I just wanted to share, you know, as we look to offer these programs, this is a summary of estimated costs to get each program started. The costs should decrease as the years continue, because some of the initial startup fees won't be there. But what this summary does not include, and it's one of the most imperative requirements that we would request, is to, in order for us to provide equitable access to all of our students, especially our underrepresented students, is the cost for transportation. While we would be transporting about the same number of students, we do expect there could be a potential increase in the distance traveled and the costs associated with it. So we don't want to be blind to that, you know, what there could be an increase in transportation costs. But again, like we said earlier, if there's no transportation, it's not a choice. And so in summary, to do differently and to provide our families and our children access to choice options that will support the development of learners prepared for the future. What we are recommending is that the board approve the superintendent's request to explore the new research-based choice recommendations, and that we will of course start with the exploration, and before moving forward, we would bring back the findings from that exploration with the recommendations of which choice options that we would like to bring forth to the board for approval to implement. So we do want Orange County Schools to be the first choice for our families. And so we want to make sure that we're providing that equitable access to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dawson. This is really exciting to see. And I'm interested to hear what the board has to say and the questions. Ms. Stevens?
Yeah, my question has to do with, help me understand, Dr. Dawson, about this middle college, because it's my understanding that we've been in a partnership with Durham Community College, and our students have been taking classes all along, because actually I went to a graduation, a young lady got her associate's degree and she transferred to UNC because she wanted to be a doctor like her dad. So we already have that in place. So are we going to like scrap that and do something different?
So to my understanding, Ms. Stevens, what we have is, you're right, we have a partnership, but what that partnership entails is us sending our students to Durham Public Schools and their middle college high school. So we lose our ADM, and so that their students could go, our students can go and have access to that opportunity because we don't offer it. And so what we're saying is we would like to start our own middle college high school. And so we don't have to send our kids to another neighboring school system. We would offer that choice. And so they could stay here and still be able to do that. And
So,
I should say too, Ms. Stevens, Durham actually would like more seats. So it's not like it's not like we would be damaging our relationship with them because we're saying, hey, we're going to start our own middle college high school. They actually have students that would like those seats, but they're also honoring our partnership and saying, okay, you know, it is a partnership, so we'll leave these seats available to you, but is there any way we'd like to get them back? So,
and if I could also add that the new president of Durham Tech is also very interested in working with us around this.
Okay, good, because we worked so hard with Penny Gluck, and we've had a great relationship and partnership with Durham Community College because it's just down the street from the school. So I was just concerned, well, good. I don't want to, we worked hard to bridge those relationships, and I wouldn't want to do anything to damage that.
I agree.
And Dr. Dawson, do we expect that this middle college would serve the same population that is currently at Partnership Academy?
Absolutely. We would want to continue to serve our current students there and that student profile, right? Because we have certain students that prefer a smaller setting with more one-to-one interaction. We absolutely would continue supporting those students. But what we want to do is we want to offer them more access to different opportunities, because they too, just because they're going to Partnership Academy doesn't mean that they don't want opportunities at earning college credits or, you know, having internship opportunities, you know. So yes, we'd be serving those students as well, but also opening the doors to other students who would like to attend Partnership Academy for that middle college, that opportunity to attend and earn an associate's degree.
Other board members? Ms. Smiley, then Mr. Atherton.
I have well, first, just a clarification question. When we're talking about offering these as choice programs, is the thought that we would become sort of an all choice district, or that there would still be attendance zones for the different schools?
So, of course, not all of our schools would have choice offerings, right? Because as far as our elementary schools, it's still only our 3 elementary schools that would be offering choice. We would be adding the 3 middle schools to be district-wide, and then of course the high schools. The reason why I started the presentation with the policies is we would want to take a look at what is our policy, what is in our policies, because what we don't want happening is we don't want to unintentionally create schools that lack diversity. We don't want to create barriers that provide access. So I would say that some schools may continue to have an attendance zone, while some schools would become more district-wide choice. And as far as the policy review, we would get at some of that. And then, of course, when we're doing the exploration to see what the interest is, that's when we would make recommendations as to if it should be how the student assignment should happen at those schools, as far as should preference go to those who are in the attendance zone, or are we going to do like what Hillsborough has right now, is that it's district-wide choice. But that's all part of what we would be looking at in the exploration process and the review of the policies.
Mr. Atherton?
Yeah, so one comment is I think there's a little confusion on the conversation earlier. about our Durham Tech kind of relationship, because that is the Career and College Promise program that we have in place at high school, where we offer those classes to students that can take it. You're not saying we're doing away with that, are you? Because it got a little confusing when you started talking about Durham and Durham Tech, but this would be in addition to what we already have, or the CCP program, correct?
Correct. So the College and Career Promise is a state initiative that's open to all qualified students in the high schools. That of course remains. And so the difference between, because technically I could go to Orange High School, I could go to Cedar Ridge High School, and through CCP, I could work to get an associate before I graduated high school. The difference between that program and the middle college high school program that we're proposing is we're very strategic in aligning our scope and sequence of courses in such a way to ensure that when I'm a ninth grader starting at the middle college high school, and I know that I'm earning, working toward an associate degree, the scope and sequence of courses for dual enrollment and all of that is very much laid out. And it's just the way that kids approach it that's different than the CCP at the high school level.
Okay.
So the approach is just a little bit different, but all students have access to CCP and earning college credits, and we would never take that away from them.
Yeah, I didn't think we were talking about that, but just when it was being explained, I was like, wait, I didn't think we were changing it. So the other question I had is, HES did have transportation, and I think it was 3-mile radius or something. Was that taken away at some point?
I do want to say that some students, they do have transportation, but it's very, very few.
Agree.
Yeah, because if they're in that attendance zone, because Central is so close, right? And so if they're in that zone, they do have, yeah. But again, it's very, very few.
It is. I just knew that there was something, it wasn't heavily utilized, it's not enough. The other thing I just wanted to, I guess in that vein, is that I think when we talk about year-round, there are other barriers besides transportation. One of the most common ones I hear is intercession, right? And I think if we really want to accommodate our community and change diversity, we need to be surveying people that are not in the year-round and say, hey, why didn't you choose year-round? Because I've heard families say, hey, I can't do the intercessions because during the summer I can get free childcare for numerous reasons, or it's not that there's not stuff offered, it's the cost barrier, and it's free here, it's not free here. So I think there are other elements that we probably should understand as part of that. How do we open up access to families? On the middle school, I know you mentioned, hey, families could transfer that were in year-round, but I think we also have to think about how we make that more features, right? Because the capacity of the middle school is much larger than the elementary, and to make sure we utilize that and SAPO and all of that, I think that's another discussion. And I guess the last one is for HES, we really need to have a discussion about the campus, right? What do we do about it? How do we, address it? And, especially with some, looking at doing this as well. And on transportation in general, I'm very concerned for us to understand, because I do know the state reimburses us based on efficiencies. And if we are, pulling from everywhere, we are going to have a budget item to accommodate that. I would just like to make sure we can understand what that's going to be, anyway.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Atherton, thank you for sharing that, or all of that. I would just say, again, that would all be part of the exploration process. Those would be things that we would look into and bring back to the board for further consideration.
That's great. And I know y'all had mentioned the redistricting, and obviously to change a middle school to year-round, that's a redistricting effort as well. So thank you, Dr. Felder.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It's really interesting. And for an incrementalist like me, I kind of have initial panic at all these ideas. But so trying to digest all of them and just imagine what really seems to make sense just from my vantage point. I really like the AI lab at Central idea. And I know it mentions just one of the middle schools could then house an AI lab. And I could imagine that going on at Stanford and feeding on into, because those feed on into Orange, where there's, you know, that's where the robotics team is primarily housed, and there's been extra engineering offerings, and also with the tie-in with robotics and ag and the ag program there. It's a really interesting kind of flow of specialties to think about. So I like that idea, and similarly, I like the idea of the expanded IB offerings and imagining which, you know, schools, which set of schools will be most situated towards that. And in addition to wondering how we would pull off a year-round middle school, not knowing how that would work, I also had, you know, as a parent with kids recently coming through Orange, I don't quite understand the Cambridge program yet, and I'm sure we'd hear a lot more, but I have just a concern based on experience of offering high-level classes that we don't actually keep staffed consistently. Like, I know we have a lot of AP course offerings at Orange that sometimes we don't have teachers for, or there's, you know, so I'm just, the scope of this is so big. I'm wondering how we'll really be able to fulfill our promises and you know, continue to offer what's already promised.
So definitely, Ms. Doyle, you're right that these programs would require professional development of our teachers, right? And I think when you take a look at programs such as IB in Cambridge, these are coveted classes that teachers want to teach, just like AP courses. And so usually, at least my experience has been that when teachers are teaching these courses, there's less turnaround because they really like what these courses offer and what they are learning as teachers and the way to teach and what they're teaching. So sometimes, you know, it's a little bit easier to retain teachers that are teaching these courses than not, but you're absolutely right. If there is turnover, that does mean that we have to get teachers the professional development that they need to be able to qualify to teach.
Ms. Smiley and then Ms. Hauser.
Just some comments, pros and cons from the presentation. One, I really support the idea that we should engage our students in things that will prepare them for the future around critical thinking, problem solving, self-efficacy, teamwork. You know, like that's what, and some of my comments around the AIG is actually that I wish more of those, I see those things in the AIG coursework and I would like to see it everywhere. So very supportive of that. I do have several concerns just to elevate for you. One is this cost of transportation and just the amount of time kids would spend on buses and things like that. I would actually prefer that we see a strong estimate of that first with some hypothetical numbers to even talk about if this is even feasible. Because I think that there are multiple ways to get at those developing those competencies in students that either are choice programs or are strong curricula and, like, you know, school cultures and themes, but it doesn't need to be choices. Like, I'm not sold that it has to be choices. I think it could be strong curriculum and themes in different schools. I I am concerned that programs like this can and do sometimes further segregate schools. And I know you acknowledge that and you would think about that, but that is on my mind. I guess I do have a concern and a question around, you know, who is asking for this and sort of how are we, who's at the decision-making table? You know, where do the ideas come from? Who gets to decide how we approach that? And I think we need to be really, really thoughtful and thorough about stakeholder involvement, more than I would like to see that be very thoughtful. And then my last concern is just putting our attention here now, and spreading ourselves very thin. I think learning these kinds of skill sets, especially around critical thinking, are really important for our students. When I think about the number of change efforts that we have talked about, including around literacy and other things, I have a real concern about doing this right now. I think that these are things that I would not feel, I have a real concern about that. And it's hard to react to it without a strategic plan. This is our vision. These are our priorities right now, given our needs, therefore this. So in the absence of that, I am just really concerned about all the people who would be spending their time standing up these programs when what I want them focused on is addressing the needs of our students right now. Those are all my thoughts. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Ms. Hauser?
Yeah, I just want to, well said. Thank you, Ms. Smiley. And everyone's made really good points here, and great, really provocative presentation. So thank you for that. I think if we polled our Hillsborough parents, they would say we want a year-round middle school. And I think that's been coming up for a long time. Yes, we didn't do it. We tried it once. It was a dual calendar school at Sandback. And I certainly would be really interested in looking at that as a priority. Although to Mr. Atherton's point, there's a question about, do we have enough kids? So is one feeder elementary enough for year-round middle school? I think, and I haven't looked at it as closely, but dual language may have the same quality of high demand. And even in the numbers you showed us, these other programs are in low demand. And I don't think it's, I think people are making choices. I'm going to trust them. But so there's that. I'm all in on the idea of we need a rough idea of what this is going to cost. Especially the transportation, because that could make it all not feasible. And it would be helpful to understand, you know, like year-round presumably would be all the seats in the school, and the other schools, how many seats are we talking about roughly? Is it, you know, Cedar Ridge IB is 40 seats. Are we talking about 40 seats in a school of 1,500? Are we talking about 500 seats? What are we really talking about when we talk about these programs? And again, what's it going to cost? What's the impact of the teachers? All the teachers have to be trained to some. So there's that. And then the bottom line is, if we do all this, what's the big so what? Why are we doing this? Are we going to see more enrollment? Are we going to see better achievement? What is the benefit that we're going to see from this for our kids? And I'm going to become, Ms. Doyle, I'm going to become an incrementalist. You know, I love that. But, you know, I kind of think slowing it down a little would make sense, because now is now. And we have our hands full with legislative summer school, legislative change in literacy, and 7,000 kids who are returning to school. And so that is going to really, and I would not want to see anything distract us from that as a priority. So those are my thoughts. But I love it. And the AI one, by the way, is really a hot topic. I love the idea of doing that. I'm just not sure about
Mr. Atherton, and then I will ask board for final thoughts and comments before we take action.
Yeah, I share the same concerns of timing, especially given all the things we're looking at, all the things we're trying to do. We've got a summer program. I think these are great ideas. I'm also concerned with the timing. The other question I had is, I asked this back when we were approving the choice numbers for earlier this year, is I was surprised to not see any information mentioned about the Orange High School engineering program. So is it not considered a choice, or it's not going to become a choice? You know, well, I believe it's active. It's been growing, you know, we've got some engineering, but I didn't see it in the presentation. So I didn't know if that meant it's not going to happen, or, you know, can you shed some light on where it is, or is it going to be a choice program at some point?
So that's what we would like to do, is keep it as a choice program. But as we did share earlier, we've had some staffing issues. And as you know, Project Lead the Way program has a very intense and very specific teacher training. And so we've gone through a number of teachers. And so we're really revisiting that this summer to take a look at what it is that we need to do to build some stability and to strengthen the program and to continue the program. So we are not changing the status of that program, Mr. Atherton.
Okay, but it is, you know, just for clarity for anybody listening, it is not a choice program right now. It's still
correct.
I think it was for Orange only, just to get it going, and then it would be expanded.
Yeah.
Okay,
We just didn't. Yeah.
All right. Well, are there any other thoughts, comments, burning questions before we take out Ms. Doyle?
Thanks. I have a quick question. I was trying to figure out where I saw this. The middle college high school, I think that's what MCHS stands for. There's a $100,000 one-time new location renovation. Does that mean that we would potentially move partnership? Great. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yes, and I didn't go too deep into the estimated costs, right? Because that's there for you. And again, these are just all estimates. But what we would like to propose is that if this happens, that we outfit the Welcome Center and move Partnership Academy as the new middle college high school to that location. That's the thought.
Dr. Dawson, would that be the back building of the Welcome Center?
Yes.
Okay, so not the entire campus.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, I have to.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah.
Mr. Atherton.
I just wanted to say, I know that in the budget we're about to talk about, it has that in there. And I just want to say, I would be supportive of moving partnership there no matter what. So they have a nice basketball court. They don't have to play in the street or the parking lot, you know, so they have all that field to play with. So I'd say no matter what happens, we should move partnership to give them those opportunities.
I echo that, Mr. Atherton. Just tossing in my 2 cents.
All right, board. Well, any other burning thoughts or questions before I take a motion? Is there a motion to move forward with this? Do we want to table the discussion? Do we want to have staff explore it? Mr. Atherton?
I'll just say it out loud. The feeling that I got was timing, right? That not doing, you know, not necessarily doing it right this moment, but I would entertain, you know, or I'll just throw a motion out there, or we could table it. It's just, I think the timing is the issue, or my concern is timing, doing it right now. I don't know how other board members feel.
Am I seeing thumbs up from board members?
I agree.
there's just so much going on right now.
So I'll speak with Dr. Felder and we can work through when the board wants to talk about this again and take action on it. Does that seem like where everyone is? Any thoughts from anyone? Ms. Doyle?
I guess, I mean, I agree with the timing piece, and unless there's, you know, the ones stand out, some of these are more, you know, a little bit disruptive than others, and some are more additive. So if it were narrowed quite a bit, I would be more open to doing something sooner.
Ms. Hauser?
Yeah, I think that's a good thought. Like, for example, the middle school, the year-round middle school appears to be a priority for parents. And by the way, these are great ideas, you know, so it's not about that, it's just about how much we already have on our plate. But I think the middle school, and I heard from several of the board members that the understanding of what it would cost to bring transportation effectively to Hillsborough Elementary, but then also if we did a middle school, what would that cost? We really need to understand what that looks like before we get very deep into this.
Well, it sounds like the board is not ready to take action tonight. So I think that we probably need to table this and bring it back to a meeting soon where we can discuss how we want to move forward. So I don't believe that we actually need to take action for that. Do we, Eva? Ms. Davidson, sorry.
No, I don't think you need to take action to say you're not taking action.
Didn't think so, just wanted to check myself there. All right, well, the last item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing for the proposed budget for the coming year, and I will turn it over to Ms. Rhonda Roth, our Chief Financial Officer.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I want to say good evening to Chair McKenzie, Vice Chair Ms. Stevens, board members, Dr. Felder, the community that's listening in, staff and students. I thank you for this opportunity to be here again to discuss with you and have a discussion about the superintendent's recommended budget and proceeding forward with what will become the board's budget for the fiscal year of 2022. The budget that we are about to present to you has changed a little bit from the last time that we spoke with you regarding the superintendent's recommendation, and we will talk more about what those changes are and why those changes have occurred at this time. Next slide, please, Ms. Bunch. This quote should look familiar to you. We are in the business of educating the students of Orange County schools, and public education is the cornerstone of a working, progressive, democratic society. Therefore, it does matter where education dollars are spent, and budgeting decisions take on significance because this is our business. This quote is intended to ground and capture the spirit in which we bring this recommended budget to you today. You know, in spite of lack of universal.
Did Ms. Rapp just cut out?
Yeah.
Wasn't sure if it was just me again.
Because that hotspot budget item, I'm telling you.
Looks like she completely lost audio.
Yeah. Oh.
Am I there now?
You're back.
I'm gonna turn off my video, okay?
Yeah.
So maybe that'll help. I apologize. I did not realize that you guys weren't hearing me, so I'll keep an eye on this little blue box around my name. This quote is familiar. We are in the business of educating the students of Orange County schools, and this quote is intended to ground and capture the spirit of the budget that we're bringing forward to you today. Next slide, please. Our 4 priorities for the upcoming fiscal year remain the same as they were last year. We continue to prioritize equity, and equity is defined in the board's equity policy as eliminating disparities and creating supportive, safe, inclusive, and responsive environments and ensuring all students have what they need to succeed. We continue to prioritize literacy. Literacy is not an option. It is a civil right. Our students deserve to have access to a quality life. Key to a quality life is the ability to read, write, listen, speak, and think critically. We continue to prioritize climate and culture and social and emotional learning of our students. This is the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve goals, and feel and show empathy for others. Family engagement also continues to be prioritized as well. We know that students and families come as a package, and we don't get one without the other. And these are the 4 priorities that we are presenting a budget to you encompassing. Next slide, please. As this chart is intended to reflect is what our average daily membership has been for the last 7 years. And as you can see, our student membership has actually trailed off from where we were in fiscal year 2016. And our charter school membership has increased. As you will see, we've grown roughly 34 students are in charters this year currently in comparison to last year. And as a result of COVID, as you can see, our projected ADM for next fiscal year is roughly 84 below where we were in fiscal year 2021. Next slide, please. This is important to know and to understand because that is how we are funded. Our funding flows to us from our state resources as well as our local resources based upon our average daily membership and the number of students that we have. Here is a comparison of what our total student billing base is projected to be for the upcoming fiscal year local operating budget. The projected ADM is a projection from DPI that is based on live birth certificates as well as other growth data in the county, and we are projected to be at 7,299, which is actually a decrease of 82 over where we were projected for fiscal year 21. Our charter school enrollment at this time is at 919 students. We're very fortunate to be in a county where commissioners recognize that they recognize students as Orange County students and not as Orange County school students. They do understand that per state statute that those local dollars have to follow those students. And so we are very fortunate that they do fund us for all of those students who are enrolled in charter schools that are domiciled in Orange County Schools District. We do take out any out-of-district students who are sitting in seats in our schools that these are students that live in another district but are attending our schools and not paying out of district tuition. These are students that are staff member children. This is a recruitment and retention tool to be able to allow staff to be able to enroll their students in our schools. So that average daily membership is accounted for in other places, so we're not able to account for it here. So when you take our projected enrollment, factor in those students that are in our charter schools, and then take out those out-of-district students, we get a total billing base, which is what county commissioners and the state look at to determine how much funds to provide Orange County schools. So in total, right now, we are looking at a decrease of 50 students for the upcoming fiscal year in comparison to last year. If we then take that total billing, a total student base of 8,110 students, and apply the per pupil funding that commissioners approved and provided Orange County schools for the current fiscal year, we can anticipate revenue of exactly of 35.4 million. We would hope in our projections as we're beginning to build this budget that commissioners would at least hold our per pupil funding at what they gave us in fiscal year 21 and not decrease that. So that is the reason that we use that as a baseline. Next slide, please. So you will see here that based upon the per pupil funding that we received from the county in fiscal year 21, that if the county funds us based upon our current student projections, that we can anticipate a decrease of roughly $201,000 as a result of the 50 student decrease that we are seeing in our average daily membership. In order for us to be held harmless and for our funding to remain at the same level that we had in the previous year, we would need at least an increase of $25 per pupil to ensure that we receive the same amount of funding this year as we did last year. Next slide, please. Here we are projecting what we anticipate our expenditures to be. Previously, I showed you what our anticipated revenue was, and as you can see here, I am building our continuation budget with the hopes and intent of wanting commissioners to hold our average daily membership harmless and to not decrease our funding as a result of the 50 students that we decreased in our projection. Also included here for the continuation budget is the mandated salary increases as well as benefit increases. We do know that the governor's budget has been released, and I also have it on from word on the street that the governor's budget included salary increases that have already been negotiated, and based upon the current structure of our legislature and the alignment of the political parties, it is felt that what is in the governor's budget is very probable to materialize for salary increases this year, where in past years that has not been the case. So this $950,000 represents the employees in our district who are currently being paid from local resources, and it reflects a 5.7% increase for certified staff and a 5% increase for our non-certified staff. So that is where the $950,000 is generated from. We also know that there is a increase in our benefit rate, our retirement benefit rate, as well as the employer's portion of the hospital premium that we pay on each of our employees that elect to participate in the state health plan. That would just be for these employees in the district who are funded from local resources. The benefits increase associated with those is $291,000. So our superintendent's recommended budget that we have would include holding our ADM harmless, which would be the additional $25 that we would need per pupil, as well as asking the commissioners to fund us for the anticipated salary increases for our certified and non-certified employees. So that gets us to a need of $36.9 million, or that would equate to $178 per pupil. Okay, next slide. So previously, we had brought to you the following items as expansion items. And the last time that we were before you, we did not have the information that we currently have now in regards to how those ESSER funds can be utilized and what we can utilize them for. So as a result, this budget is proposing that these items are not expansion items, but that these items would become placeholders for our ESSER funding, and that we would look to those funds for these items. Next slide, please. So this is just a synopsis of the ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3 funds and what they can be utilized for. We were more restricted with those ESSER 1 funds and exactly how they could be utilized and what they could be spent on. And there was also a fair share that had to be allocated out of those. In regards to the ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3 dollars, these, as you've talked about and we've talked about many times, that they are here to address remediation and enrichment, as well as these funds can be utilized on professional development, parent engagement, supplemental after-school programs, sanitation and cleaning supplies, and providing principals and other school leaders with resources that they need to address specific needs at their individual schools. Next slide, please. So, what is presented here before you, before I even begin walking through each of these slides, I just want to share that the dollars that you are seeing here, a lot of them, what I want us to think of in regards to the ESSER 2 and the ESSER 3, and even fund balance in some cases, that these dollars are placeholders. You know, our intent was to share a structure about how we would envision the spending being for these ESSER dollars, to also, and to just give you enough information to make the decision and to help determine how we want to proceed forth with our request to county commissioners. What you see here is the current school year that we are currently in, and you will see all throughout this presentation, you know, we've talked about our 4 priorities and the literacy, climate and culture, family engagement, all under the umbrella of equity. And also what is foremost through this entire presentation is to address the learning loss and to accelerate learning for our students. We know there have been some struggles, negative impacts as a result of schools being closed for almost a year. And we know that we've got to remediate our students, but we also, you know, as we've talked about through the previous presentations, also want to make sure that we provide enrichment opportunities for all of our students. I wanted to just kind of give you a big snapshot here of what we've basically spent in the 21 fiscal year as a result of COVID. We had COVID relief funds that we received that flowed to us through the state that were roughly the $1.1 million. And all of those funds were expended by December the 30th. we've had to appropriate fund balance in support of a lot of the needs of our students. You will see that the items that are in bold with an asterisk are all of those fund balance appropriations that the board has already approved and that we have already expended. You will see 3 items that are added on there that are requests during this budget or recommendations during this budget process for the board to consider appropriating fund balance for. The ESSER 1 funds that we received at the end of fiscal year 20 have will be pretty much spent definitely by the end of next fiscal year, but they are planned and committed as reflected in the chart here as to where those funds are planned to be spent. So that was $943,000, almost $1 million that was there that has been committed for support in the curriculum, safety, and social and emotional areas of our students. ESSER $2, we are projected to receive roughly $3.7 million from this program. And as a placeholder, we are placing in roughly $500,000 in support of the Summer Scholars Program. We also have roughly an additional $150,000 that will be flowing to us from the state for, this is our Read to Achieve allotment that comes to us each year to support that. And there's also $100,000 that we have earmarked that is in a Burroughs Welcome STEM grant that is also going to be used for the summer programs. So as a placeholder in looking at our Summer Scholars Program for the 6 weeks that we have coming up beginning this June, we roughly have a placeholder of $750,000. But overall, so far, that it puts us at a spending for this fiscal year outside of our normal local operating budget, which is $35.6 million, an additional $6.5 million. Next slide. So here again is just a structure and placeholders for looking at next fiscal year. As you can see, the COVID relief funds and the ESSER 1 funds have been expended and are no longer available. The highlighted items up under each of these titles is the numbers that we have to work with for the upcoming fiscal year. Fund balance based upon the previous slide of all the items that we have already appropriated and committed, and then the 3 additional items that we're recommending for appropriation would bring our fund balance to $2.2 million that would be available and unrestricted for the board to appropriate and to spend. Based upon the latest information that we have received concerning ESSER 3, we are anticipating and forecasting a $6.7 million allocation in support of those funds. And as you can see, we've kind of just placed placeholders in here in regards to the spending of these funds. And, you know, it will be, I guess I think it's important to say that a lot of these things, as we work through these and know more, the cost could be lower or could be higher, and that we would make adjustments to make sure that we protect fund balance, but also utilize these funds and utilize them fully. Next slide, please. And all of that to say, I think everyone on this board knows where I stand on fund balance and knows where I stand on depleting fund balance totally. And I guess I just wanted to share again why I think it's important for us to maintain some level of funds in our fund balance. Typically, our federal budgets do not drop down available to us in the school district until the October or December timeframe. Well, we start programs up in July, on July 1, and in a lot of cases, in every case, the only funds that are immediately available to us are any funds that we might carry over in particularly Title I and Title II programs that were unspent from the previous year. So they are much smaller balances than we would typically receive from these programs. So as a result, our state and local funds typically have to carry these federal programs until those funds are dropped. And for example, a federal payroll typically is $200,000 per month. So when you are looking at 3 to 4 months of just payroll expenditures, you're looking at over $500,000 to $1 million that we are carrying out of our state and local funds until those federal funds drop to us. Another concern that I have is I think it's prudent for us to at least make sure that we have enough in our fund balance to cover a local payroll. And a local payroll for our district currently is $2 million. I also think it's important for the board to have the ability and the flexibility to address any non-recurring expenditures for initiatives that we want to move forward with promptly. I would not like to have the district in a position where there was no fund balance, and if something came up that we felt like was an initiative that we thought would benefit our students and our staff, if we didn't take budget from somewhere else, i.e. reduce our budget spending locally, we would have to go to commissioners and say, you know, we need to be able to have funds to purchase LED TVs to place in all of our classrooms to support teachers to do synchronous and asynchronous learning. And I also just want to reiterate that a fund balance shows solid financial planning as well as sound fiscal management. And I'll leave it at there because I think everyone knows where I stand, but I guess I just wanted to take this opportunity to just share with you again why my stance is that. Next slide, please. So what we have presented to you so far as the recommendation is that we would only ask commissioners for $178 per pupil increase to fund our anticipated increases for salaries and benefits, and to also hold our ADM loss harmless and fund us as we were funded the previous year. Well, in reality, the likelihood of $178 per pupil increase is not very probable. When you look at the history of how we have been funded per pupil, it has been at least 5 years since we've had a per pupil funding that is in the ballpark of what we would be asking commissioners for this year. So as a result, if we don't receive that $178 per pupil, we're going to have to shift some of our continuation budget needs to other areas. And so what that means is that might mean some of the placeholders that we have shared with you in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 we would not be able to do. And that is the intent of what we wanted to show here, is that our placeholders in likelihood would not materialize if we don't receive that funding from our commissioners. Next slide. I'm not going to spend as much time on the next two slides because, again, this is just a structure and placeholders and showing of how, you know, we're going to try to not deplete our fund balance, but also to ensure that we remediate our students as well as provide enrichment for them and utilize those ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 dollars for the next 2-3 years. ESSER 2 will be available to us through September of 2023. And if you'll go to the next slide, ESSER 3 will only be available to us through September of 2024. So based upon the placeholders and the structure that we have here for you, we would be trying to maximize those dollars to be able to cover for the 3 years that they are available to us. Next slide, please, ma'am. So in summary, as I said before, this recommendation includes is a $178 per pupil increase request to commissioners, which would put our total per pupil at $44,545. Okay, next slide. And again, the nice quote that we shared with you before, the whole people must take upon themselves the education of the whole people and be willing to bear the expenses of it. And that's all I have for you. So now I will take questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rath, for your presentation as always. Board members, do you have comments before we, I don't believe we have anyone signed up to speak from the public. Maybe I should check that first. Ms. Stowe, could you confirm that we don't have any public comment, please?
That's correct.
Okay, then we have a few minutes for questions before we adjourn. Ms. Hauser and then Mr. Atherton.
I just want to first clarify something, that for the budget, we need to get clear on what we're asking the county for, but the ESSER budget is completely under the discretion of our board. That we get to, right, that we don't have to ask the county about that. We just have to ask them what we want from them.
That is correct, Ms. Hauser. We are just required, based upon House Bill 82, when it does become law, that we have to adhere to that, which is the summer programs. And legislators have stated that they will not give additional funding for that, and that they ask that local education agencies utilize those ESSER dollars to carry forth the directives in House Bill 82.
Okay. So I have a list of items that I'd like to see us add back to the expansion budget, and I have a couple of comments on the ESSER items. So I don't know if you want that now or let other people speak, but whenever you want, I'll share that.
Ms. Raft, I don't know if you
now
or...
Sure. You know, what I would like to get from the board collectively is how you want this recommended budget to be changed or revised, if changed or revised, to become your budget on April the 12th, that we would then provide to the county commissioners as our official funding request for the 2022 fiscal year. So, you know, Ms. Hauser is, I think your suggestions, you know, are warranted and great. I just need clear direction from the board as a whole of what you want in your budget that will, you will vote to approve on April the 12th.
So let me throw some items out there, then, I don't know, Ms. McKenzie, you could decide how you want to deal with it. I would like the hotspots put in the expansion budget. I think we just spent an hour talking about AIG for Title I schools. That's going to require the addition of 2 AIG teachers. I think that belongs in our expansion budget as a recurring expense. I do know that we're showing a decline in enrollment, but a dig into that shows an expansion in our number of Spanish families or native Spanish speakers in the district. And I think because of that, first of all, the family liaisons that are coming out of the fund balance should be moved to the operating budget. I actually would like to propose that we add 2 more Spanish family liaisons. I'd like to support the dual language pre-K, the English language learners, and the Karen and Burmese. And these are all, I picked the ones that are all school level positions. Now, the other way to go with this, I'd like to support the TA workdays, but I'm happy to leave that in ESSER because in the next year, there's going to be so much going on. I want to make sure the TAs are available. I'd like to make sure they're paid for. I don't care, but I don't care where that comes from. But these other things, I think, our district is changing, and I think those changes are needed to fund our needs on an ongoing basis. That's mine.
Ms. Smiley?
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Hauser on that. I mean, I was supportive of the first proposal of the budget that we discussed. Many, all of these items that would be moved into ESSER funding. What I appreciated about that version was, with the exception of, I think, maybe one item, the sort of short-term surge one-time items were being put in the emergency relief money, and the long-term investments, because of things like our district is changing or our district has ongoing needs, those were in the continuation budget, the request of the commissioners. I think we should do, I don't think we should put full-time positions that we think we will continue to need into short-term ESSER funding. I think we should ask the commissioners for what we need. I also, part of what appeals to me about that, and appealed to me about that originally, was it preserved this federal relief money is like, we have a crisis moment and we need to invest more right now. And so there were things, I would like to see more of that from how we spend the ESSER dollars, like a serious investment. I know I keep bringing up high dosage tutoring, not much makes a bigger impact on accelerating learning. So like, I would have wanted to see, like, separate from what we proposed to the commissioners, like just a real plan to invest in that, extending the school day, short term, adding some more TAs, maybe more mental health or support. I want us to preserve that ESSER money to short term invest way more. And I do have concerns about taking this like investment for the moment money and putting it in things like an EL coordinator, which we know are needed, or a TIMS coordinator, or maintenance staff, which are just things that we need and we should just ask for. So that's where I'm at.
Mr. Atherton?
So I completely agree that we should not be using one-time funding for reoccurring expenses, because what's going to happen is when the money runs out, we're going to have this huge per pupil request to the county, and we're going to be begging to maintain it, or we're going to be not able to sustain these positions. The struggle I have is, the items that we bring forward to the county. I agree with Ms. Rath that 178 per pupil is just not going to happen as they are not getting increased revenues. And, the history shows that it's just not realistic, even some of the best times. So I worry about our approach of putting everything on there and walking in and them saying, hey, that's not going to happen. You're going to get X dollars, which is much less, and then we're going to be back doing this as well. So I struggle with what our message to the commissioners are, and then our district preparing for that plan when we don't get that amount, just to cover the items that we know will be required unfunded items, as Ms. Rath showed. So I think we've got to figure out somewhere in between to show forward how we're going to invest these dollars, ESSER dollars. And I agree, extend the day, put it in all of those things. I think those are very valuable, but I struggle with asking the county for something we know that's just completely not realistic from the historic and funding amounts.
Other board members? Ms. Hauser?
I have, I don't know, I just have a separate topic, and that's on the projects, like, the summer school. I don't know about the virtual academy. I think we need to know a lot. I think those all belong in ESSER and they need a lot more discussion. But if I had to guess intuitively, if that summer school is going to be 7 figures, not 6 figures, and that our remediation programs next year will probably be in the millions as well. But I can't say, but we really need plans on that. We don't need to know that. They don't belong in the continuation budget. I think we're all agreeing on that. But we really do need to see those plans fleshed out, because I think we're about to be told, we're about to be told that we need to offer K-12 summer school 6 weeks with transportation and food. Right? I cannot imagine we're going to do that for $500,000. Anyway.
Any other burning questions or thoughts from the board?
Well, I just wanted to weigh in, Madam Chair, that I agree that using one-time monies for reoccurring costs is never a good idea, because we might find ourselves in a bad situation. So I agree with the other board members on that point.
Yeah, I certainly do too. I don't know that we need to go line by line. I think Ms. Rath and Dr. Felder have heard our, general comments about this, and we will be able to revisit it at our next board meeting. Ms. Rath, do you feel like you need anything more specific from us?
At this time, I feel like you guys have given me great feedback, and I'm pretty much walking away with that this board is more inclined of the original expansion budget items being added back for commissioners. So I think, I hear, that the summer scholars program and maybe some of the other programs that we had for expansion, such as in particular Saturday school or the standalone virtual school, that those may be more aligned with the one-time funding, but these other items of the AIG teachers, our English language learner teachers, and all of those items that I am hearing that the board would like to see their budget include those as expansion requests to the commissioners.
Mr. Atherton?
Yeah, just one other thought that I'll throw out there that may be a little provocative on the item is for virtual school, we really don't know what the numbers are going to be or the affordability of it. And I wonder if we should think about partnering with Chapel Hill and offering an Orange County-wide kind of virtual program where their numbers are low, our numbers are low, but we have this option that is based on public school versus us trying to do one and them trying to do one. I have no idea, but I think this is one of those that it's worth at least a conversation. So we, you know, are still providing what the, you know, families of Orange County want. But just a thought I wanted to throw out there as, you know, this, I think it's going to be very expensive. And I've already seen multiple districts already talking about removing it or not continuing it. And I know as we look at our budget and funding and we have to make some tough decisions, I definitely, you know, would prefer to do something outside the box on just a discussion about that possibility. May not bear any fruit, but anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. Ms. Hauser and then Ms. Smiley.
It's really a question for Ms. Rath. In the past, has the county ever held us harmless on an ADM decline on our budget? And then secondly, has the county ever not funded a salary increase that was state mandated?
Great questions. Let me start with your first one on our average daily membership. In my tenure in presenting budgets, I've not had a situation where we've had an ADM decrease overall. So I've not had any encounter where we would have need to be held harmless, where we had an overall decrease. You know, and that's taking into charter schools, as I stated before, where we're fortunate enough to have commissioners who fund all of those students. So from what I can speak to, we've not had a situation where our ADM has decreased. And remind me your second question, Ms. Hauser. I thought I had it. I apologize.
Other increase is really mandated by the state, and we're just keeping our employees whole. And I wondered if the county has ever not funded that.
Yes, they did not fund us for in this current fiscal year. We had to appropriate $273,000 to just balance our budget because commissioners were unable to provide us the per pupil need for our continuation budget that was presented for fiscal year 21.
That was benefits, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was benefits as well as the step increases for certified staff. They received the $1,000 annual step increase, i.e. for their years of experience, but there were no other increases other than the benefits.
Thank you.
My thought was just, you know, I think we need to, as part of the story to the commissioners, also be able to explain what we are going to spend this ESSER money on, you know, and so maybe we don't have every detail of that, but explaining why these things are coming to them and the intent, our intent with the other money in terms of investing more over the next 3 years in X, Y, and Z type of things. And that is, you know, what we expect that money to be spent on. So just a framing thing, I do think that'll be important for them to understand at least a little bit about.
And I appreciate your comments, Ms. Smiley. That was kind of the intent, was that we are thinking that as we go into our request for the commissioners, they are aware that we're getting these ESSER dollars. And we want to make sure that we communicate that there is a plan. And even though for the average individual that they could think that this is a large amount of money, but however, we are up against some pretty tall struggles or obstacles to remediate our kids, and we've got to do that, and that's important. And it's going to be expensive. We know that it's going to take all of these dollars to be able to do that. And I think the intent of this presentation was to show that even though our audience, you know, right now is our board as well as our public, to show that there is a structure that is being developed, and that, you know, that we are planning for how these dollars are going to be spent, and being able to articulate that to commissioners to validate why we need that $178 per pupil increase.
So it has come to my attention, Ms. Hauser tells me that Jamie Stanford would like to speak, and I don't think that he has signed up on our form, but I do want to hear from members of the public who have comments about the budget. So I want to take this moment, Mr. Jones, if you could please unmute Jamie Stanford and give him his 3 minutes for public comment.
He is unmuted.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Ms.
Sanford, are you there?
I am, Ms. McKenzie. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard.
Absolutely, welcome.
I just wonder, listen to your budget negotiations and the lack of funds going forward as presented by, I think, your budget director. If someone can explain to me the $200,000 that's a line item in your agenda for the budget to be spent on renaming the schools, I would love to know how exactly that money is going to be spent. And I would like some justification for $200,000, which could otherwise be spent in more effective ways, based on the conversations that your board and staff have just had. It seems to me that this effort to rename CW Stanford Middle School was never investigated in terms of the cost that would be associated with renaming the school, or perhaps those costs were ignored in an effort to get the agenda passed to actually rename the school. But I would appreciate it if the board members could address that and tell me how that $200,000 would be spent between Cameron Park and CW Stanford Middle School. I quite frankly don't understand it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford. We don't respond in meetings to public comment, but we can certainly email if you would like to reach out to us. Thank you. So with that, I believe that ends our public comment unless anyone else has heard from anyone who would like to speak. I will just ask board members if there are any closing comments, concerns, questions. Dr. Felder, Ms. Rath, Dr. Dawson, does anyone have any closing business? Oh, Ms. Doyle, I'm sorry, your hand was like the same color as your wall on my screen. I apologize.
That's fine, thank you. I appreciate this presentation, and thank you, Ms. Rath. And I have to say, I do feel really good about everything that has been financially managed in our school district this year. I know it's been just a huge lift, and I'm proud of Orange County Schools. I have the same hesitancy about the virtual school, as was mentioned. And one other question, I was going through our Plan B updates that got sent out since we ran out of time at our board meeting. And there was a comment in there about, you know, we were just talking earlier on about the difficulty of filling our AIG positions, and it talks about in that Plan B update that some of it is the supplements that are offered in Orange County schools, and I was puzzled by Durham Public Schools having higher supplements. It also mentioned Chapel Hill Carrboro schools have higher supplements. Am I understanding that correctly? Because since we're the same county as Chapel Hill Carrboro schools, I was puzzled how they were able to have higher supplements. And I also thought we had a higher tax basis than Durham Public Schools. So I was just wondering where that fits in this budget request, if you could point me to where I should be seeing that, and if I got that right to begin with. Thank you.
Ms. Doyle, your question is around where in the budget request are those items for the, could you repeat that so I can ensure that I heard you clearly?
Ms. Rath, so is it accurate, is my understanding accurate that our supplements are lower than what's offered in Durham Public Schools or Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools?
I can tell you that they are different. I would have to actually research that and would be willing to do that. I do know I've talked with the finance officer at Chapel Hill that they're structured differently, and I do believe that part of their budget request is looking at adjusting those because they are competing with Wake County. But as far as exactly what our difference is with those two counties, I would need to research that further to answer that specifically.
Rhonda, this is Teresa. Can I respond?
Thank you, Teresa. I would love that. Thank you.
Yes, and so that comment is absolutely correct, that the way that we provide our supplements to teachers is based on the number of years in the district. And so most of other districts provide their supplement based on your number of years in the profession. And so based on that calculation, some of our teachers are at a disadvantage. The advantage is if you worked in Orange County, then all of your career, then you have a higher teacher local supplement. But if you're new to the district and you have prior teaching experience, you're going to come in at the lower supplement because the supplement is now based on years in Orange County. And so that's something that we've been talking about in cabinet, and something that I'd like to find out what the financial impact would be, because it is something that makes us less competitive with regards to our recruitment efforts. And so it is something that, has been a challenge since that supplement change was made a few years ago.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham-Brown. Some of that detail was in the notes. I just didn't remember it all in my brain. So thank you for reminding me of that. And I'm not making any specific requests of you, Ms. Rath. I'll look forward to that information coming forward as it's discussed in cabinet, it sounds like.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Ms. Hauser?
Yeah, just I don't remember if it was ESSER 2 or ESSER 3, but one of them had a line item that said we could use that money for school-initiated funding requests. And I wondered if we've gone to our schools and asked them what they need, and what would help them.
Those discussions are in process, and that was the placeholder for those school mini grants that you will see that were weaved into the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding. That the intent of that placeholder was to provide an avenue and ability for schools to be able to make requests for funds for specific needs at the individual schools.
Thank you.
All right. Dr. Felder, do you have any closing business?
I do not, Mrs. McKenzie.
All right, Ms. Rath, are you good?
I am good. I appreciate the feedback, and I look forward to having a budget for you on April the 12th for your approval.
Thank you so much. And
Madam
with
Chair,
that,
I move to adjourn.
Second. I have a motion for Ms. Stevens and a second for Ms. Hauser. I vote yes. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle.
Yes.
We're adjourned. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.